NBC Sports Network welcomes you to the following presentation of the Tour de France. Each year they gather here, eager fans and elite competitors, to a place of rich tradition, where anticipation builds for an unparalleled event.
Anticipation.
For nearly 100 years they have come here to try these roads and test themselves, contenders throughout a century in constant pursuit of glory. Gloire. In this storied place, the greatest race in cycling soon begins. An epic ride with daunting obstacles. From a peloton packed with narrow streets to high-speed rides around hairpin turns and mountain climbs that are not only exhausting, but nothing short of breathtaking.
À couper le souffle.
The road will test their resolve for 21 days, over 2,000 miles, in heat, rain, and perhaps even snow. They must persevere. Because in this race, determination alone is not enough. And to triumph, a contender must be altogether relentless.
Impitoyable.
This Australian seized an historic victory. Now he looks to defy his age in fierce pursuit of a repeat. For almost a century, his nation has awaited a crowning moment here. And now, this Olympic track cycling star has the chance for a defining victory on the road as he aims to break through on behalf of Great Britain. While these countrymen strive to bring American cycling brilliance to the forefront. Soon it will begin, an all-out charge toward Paris and the greatest pinnacle in cycling, the Tour de France.
Le Tour de France.
Hey everyone, welcome to Tour de France Primetime. I'm Liam McHugh. The 99th Tour de France is underway. The Prologue finished up on the streets of Liège behind me just about an hour ago. We saw some brilliant individual efforts, and we will bring you complete coverage of the opening day's action in just a bit. For that, I welcome in Bob Roll and our newest cycling analyst, Scott Moninger, a man who raced for 17 years professionally, amassing 275 career wins. This year, very much a race against the clock. Today's Prologue, 4 miles of the 62 miles of individual time trial mileage we'll see in the race. Let's role play a little bit. If you're considered an overall favorite for the yellow jersey, if you're going after that GC, and it's just 4 miles on the first day, how aggressive would you be?
You know, in a 3-week bike race, you want to be pretty conservative. You really do. You want to finish a lot stronger than you start. So for me personally, I would take this thing, you know, take the flats full on, but take the corners pretty conservative. You don't want to leave any skin behind on these cobbles, and just think about moving ahead to the first mountain stage and then the first real long time trials where you're going to be tested.
Skin on the cobblestones, never a good idea. Prudence and power. You would like to keep Bradley Wiggins in sight. He is a fantastic individual time trials. He comes from the track. Should be able to do a great opening prologue as well.
It's the 2012 Tour de France, the 99th Tour. Let's take a look right now at the route breakdown for this tour. 9 flat stages, 4 medium mountain stages, 5 high mountain stages, 3 summit finishes. We're referencing the 3 individual time trials over 100 kilometers, the total distance 2,173 miles. Cadel Evans, of course, he is the defending champ. If he repeats, he'd become the second oldest man to win the Tour and the oldest to win it in 90 years. Let's look back on his memorable ride of 2011.
He looks ahead. What does he see? A yellow jersey and the Arc de Triomphe.
He knows that he has to take back big time. He's fighting to save the Tour de France. He's fighting to win the Tour de France.
Now it looks as though as he climbs up this hill, he has pushed it out to a 2-second advantage. He has absolutely slaughtered his opposition. This is the winning ride of the Tour de France. Bet your boots on it as Cadel Evans of Australia makes history today. He's won the Tour de France.
Here's Cadel Evans' rider profile, 35 years old, 5'9", 147. Of course, he won the Tour de France last year, which was big considering he was a two-time Tour de France runner-up in 2007 and 2008. He actually said he thought it might be easier to repeat at the Tour de France than it was to break through and win his first. So he's obviously fairly loose coming into this one. What needs to happen for him to repeat?
Well, first of all, he has to stay out of trouble. He was the best in the field at doing that last year. Because his team was dedicated to his chances, they believed in Cadel. They raced for him from the very first day on the open road in last year's Tour de France. Didn't get involved in any of those crashes, didn't lose any time. So when they got to the mountains, he was perfectly placed to start moving up in the overall standings. I think that was key. And BMC, they bring a team that's capable of doing that. And because he's won before, they have the confidence that he can do it again.
Cadel Evans, of course, the first Aussie to win the Tour de France. Bradley Wiggins, hoping to become the first Englishman to win the Tour de France. It would be the cherry on top of what has already been an extremely distinguished career for Britain's Bradley Wiggins, a 6-time Olympic medalist. See if he can add to that total later on this summer. Fourth place finish in the 2010 Tour. Of course, things didn't finish out very well last year during the 2011 Tour, but he comes into this year's race in top form. Considering he's in top form, considering this time trial heavy Tour de France, Scott, what has to happen for Bradley Wiggins to win the Tour?
I think Bradley Wiggins actually has the advantage over Cadel Evans, just based on momentum alone. He's won 3 stage races so far this year. His team has executed those perfectly. He comes into this race, I think, as the #1 favorite.
As for the USA, there are 8 Americans in this year's Tour, including 3 of the 6 oldest riders in this year's Tour de France. But, of course, 2011, there was a Tour de France for the Americans that had extreme highs and extreme lows.
This is extremely good.
Come on, guys. Come on. Bring it home. Bring it home.
Garmin will be on top of the world. 1 second has swung it the way of Garmin Cervelo. Tomorrow they lead the Tour de France. This is going to be Tyler Sparrow, big moment. First Tour de France, you're going to have to hold off Rojas. Tyler Sparrow gets it on the line.
I've been wanting to, I've been trying to for years. It all came together today.
So some amazing moments for American cycling last year in the Tour. What are your expectations for Americans in this year's Tour?
Well, a couple of veterans should get close to the top of the leaderboard throughout the Tour de France. Levi Leipheimer and Chris Horner. Levi comes in with a broken leg in training that happened in April, but he's recovered from that. He did the Tour of California and the Tour of Switzerland on good form. Chris Horner, very interesting to watch him throughout the Tour. A last-minute addition to the Radio Shack squad. Cagey veteran. Perhaps his last Tour de France. Last year he crashed out with a concussion, and this year he's hoping to do some good things. I think Chris is going to have a great Tour de France also.
Speaking of American cycling, Lance Armstrong is in the headlines, but you can certainly bet that he wishes that was not the case. Yesterday, a U.S. anti-doping agency review panel recommended moving forward with formal doping charges against Armstrong. USADA claims it has evidence that Armstrong conspired to use performance-enhancing drugs. Armstrong says he's innocent, that the charges are, quote, long on stale allegations, end quote. He also points out that he has passed more than 500 drug tests. The case now moves to an arbitration hearing. If found guilty, Armstrong could lose all 7 of his Tour titles. Of course, the direct fallout for all of this, Scott, is the fact that Johan Bruneel is not at this year's Tour. Bruneel, of course, was Armstrong's manager during his amazing run, but Bruneel's also Team Radio Shack Nissan's manager. It's a team that's seen a lot of drama in the last year. How much are they going to miss Johan Bruneel over the next 3 weeks?
You know, I think anytime your boss is asked to step down, it's going to create some dramas. You know, number one, you don't know if your contract is still valid. You don't know when your paycheck is going to get signed. So a lot of issues there. And these, you know, this team clearly needs a leader right now. They they're without their head coach.
Yeah, we were talking about him. He's sort of like the Bill Belichick of cycling. And you think about the Patriots without Bill Belichick going forward, they probably wouldn't feel all that comfortable about it. One thing they are very comfortable about is Fabian Cancellara, especially when you're in a prologue stage. Cancellara, the favorite to finish in a prologue. Of course, he won the prologue back in 2004.
He is now about to become a Tour de France stage winner.
I came to Liège in 2004 as an underdog.
At the very first day of his very first tour.
Lance and Ulrich and all the big names, but I came there and bang.
It doesn't happen very often on your first attempt at the Tour de France that you get yourself the yellow jersey.
Cancellara's first Tour de France stage win in the Prologue 2004. It was in Liège. We're back in Liège. Let's fire up the Geico stage map. Bob, give us a guided tour.
4 miles against the clock, individual race here, the race of truth. It's called that for a good reason. You're out there by yourself, no teammates to guide you, and just pure power and speed and technique through the corners, twisting, turning, 2 180-degree U-turns out on the course, and a bunch of rights and lefts, long sweeping corners, big straightaways, 100% power course on the Prologue, almost as flat as a pancake. It doesn't get a lot flatter than this in a bike race.
So we talk about Cancellara as possessing the necessary skills to be successful in a prologue just like this. What is the skill set?
You know, it's a combination of really good bike handling skills, you know, being able to take that transition from cobbles to asphalt back to cobbles, and then also just being able to ride at redline, basically your VO2 max for up to 7 to 8 minutes, which is extremely painful.
Enough with the analysis. Let's get to the call of the race. Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin.
And so it's to Liège in Belgium, Belgium's third biggest city with an habitation of 190,000 for the Prologue time trial. This is the River Mars. It stretches through 3 countries here in this part of Western Europe. But for everybody today, they're staying in Liège as they line up to watch now, in their thousands, the start of the progress, rather, of the Prologue time trial. In the start house, Paul, Tyler Farrer, who won a stage last year in this race in Redon.
And one of the rare riders, Phil, who's managed to win a stage in each of the Grand Tours, the Tour of Italy, the Tour de France, and, of course, the Tour of Spain. But here, this is not his speciality. But as all of the sprinters will do, Phil, they'll try and do their best in this violent start to the Tour de France with the hope of a yellow jersey, possibly in the first week of racing.
Big hopes for the American as he launches now. He's searching for the top form. He's a sprinter, really, but he'll want to show us today. He's in the mix as we start our journey across the part of Belgium into France. So Tyler Farrer sporting the first time seen on television or anywhere in the world for that matter, the new colours of the Garmin Sharp team. So as he gets underway now, Tyler Farrer, basically a sprinter. That's how he grabs his victories normally. He's a stage winner in all of the 3 Grand Tours. The Grand Tours are the Tour of Italy, Tour of Spain, and, of course, the Tour de France.
Well, 8th place in the Tour de France green jersey competition. You know, this year so far, Phil, he hasn't actually won himself a race. He was 2nd overall in the Tour of Qatar, and that is a bit of a shock to me because he is an aggressive rider, but he'll be looking for a win in the first week of the Tour.
This is Adam Hansen, an Australian from Queensland now. He's riding on the Lotto Belisol team. He's back in the Tour de France. Finally, he was on the HTC team alongside Mark Cavendish, new team, and now settling down back in the Tour de France. The best time remains at the finish of Andrei Grivko. He's a very early starter. He started today in 4th place of the riders, and he's holding on to best time.
Well, Phil, there's confirmation. You can see Marcel Kittel, again, a sprinter, is in 2nd place. He's looking for 6 seconds. But we're back here on board the Garmin Sharp, which is a brand new sponsor that's come in just before the start of the Tour de France for this big American squad. And we're looking here at Tyler Farrer. The crowds came in this morning in their waves. It was really remarkable to see. I really don't know where they came from.
Well, hey, Paul, this is Belgium. As you know, it's the hotbed of cycling. This is their #1 sport here in Belgium. As we're watching Tyler Farrer out on course, a chance to see the course here. We have locked down the city of Liège today. I don't know how anybody who's not watching the Tour de France can make any progress at all. We have locked down outside all of the major seats. You'll see shortly we run down the side of the River Mars on the quays there as we switch back to Adam Hansen, who isn't a bad time trialist. He's the ex-champion of Australia.
And he's also the ex-champion of the Crocodile Trophy, which is a big, long mountain bike race up in the northern part of Australia. But for him and his team, Phil, we talk about Team Sky having a complicated tactical approach to this year's Tour de France. This team is also looking for a high place in the overall standings with Jürgen van den Broek and, of course, stage victories with Andre Greipel.
Adam Hansen gritting his teeth here, trying to squeeze tenths of a second that really will count in this short prologue time trial. It's only 4 miles. See that yellow and green flash on his sleeve indicating a past champion of the time trial, which he was in 2008. 7:28 is the best time. A little bit off the pace there as Hansen crosses the line.
Yeah, but for these guys, they're just getting this first ride out of the way.
So the grimace of Adam Hansen, he's 30 years of age right now, turned 31 in fact in May this year. So Hansen now can take the rest of the day off before we start the Tour proper tomorrow. That's the situation at the moment. Early start of the day, Andre Grifko is holding on to the lead with 7 minutes 28 seconds. The 2012 Tour de France on NBC Sports Network is presented by Michelob Ultra, the superior light beer, perfectly balanced for the ultra life. By Clean Bottle, the only bottle that unscrews at both ends for easy cleaning. Spot the Clean Bottle and win big prizes. Go to cleanbottle.com to play. By the London Olympics are coming to NBC and the NBC Sports Network. Coverage begins July 25th on the NBC Sports Network, leading up to the opening ceremonies July 27th on NBC. As we look now at the River Meuse, we'll get back out on course because it shouldn't be long now, Paul, before we see the arrival of Tyler Farrar, see if he's matching anywhere near the pace of Andre Grifko, who is the fourth man out today and has come back with the best time. And here he comes, so Farrar heading home.
Well, the time he's looking to beat, of course, is 7 minutes and 28 seconds. I don't think he's going to rival that in a performance like this, Phil, but for him, he wants to stay as close to the top end of the leaderboard as he can, because over the first week, this race will be separated by only seconds before we go into the mountains.
That's right. There's no complications in the Tour de France like many races around the world. They don't offer any time bonuses at all, so it's real time all the way to Paris. Every second quite literally does count. So Tyler Farrar is in, but he's pretty well down the list at the moment. A few seconds and you really do plunge quite a long way down. But now back out on course. This is Jens Voigt on course, and Jens riding his 15th Tour de France. But his teammate is Chris Horner, who came in at the late call-up. He replaced the injured Andy Schleck earlier today. Craig Hummer was talking with him.
Chris, on paper at least, people are calling this a technical course. You just had a chance to ride it. How'd you find it?
I think it's a fun course. I don't know about real technical. Certainly there's 2 hard roundabouts you got to be careful of, but a lot of the turns seem pretty fast. Certainly Cancellara is going to be going fast. You might have to be a little more careful, but I think for me, most of the turns are full gas. But it's kind of like when you're coming over a riser and you can't really see what's around the corner, so you're a little scared to hold back. But I think most of them are full gas. You just got to have a little faith to do the course a few times, have some faith that the corner is going to open up as you come into it.
For a GC contender like yourself, is it hard to dial it back just a little bit, knowing that not only you have 3 weeks ahead, but as you said, there's other fish to fry?
For me, it's no problem because I know in order to go on GC good, top GC, I got to find some time someplace else. So the main thing about today is really just don't crash. Lose, maybe I give up 5 seconds, being a little careful here or there in a couple of roundabouts, but I'm not going to win here or lose here or anything. So it's just get through it, enjoy the moment. You have the Tour de France, great crowds out there. It's packed all the way around, and we're just training right now. So by come race time, it's going to be full.
I asked you this question a couple days ago, but how eager are you to finally toe the line and go down that start ramp today?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. This is a big month, so starting here at the Tour and then going into the Olympics. My wife coming, of course, for the end of the Tour and then follow me over to the Olympics. So it's going to be a fun month. I'm going to enjoy the whole time. Thanks.
Yes, you'll never dampen the enthusiasm of Chris Horner. He's coming up 41 years of age. Now, Karsten Kroon is out on course now. Still, it's the champion of the Ukraine, Andre Grifko, early to start, who heads up that leaderboard. Now, occasionally, we will get the pictures seizing up like this. There's nothing wrong with your television. It's to do with the buildings around and the live waves going up to the helicopters for the live pictures. Look at this crowd, Paul, all the way around.
Well, this is Jens Voigt now, fighting with his bike. This man battles his machine all of the time. He's a very good time trialist, and he's an explosive bike rider too, when you bear in mind that he clocks in at 39 years of age. But the crowd that have turned out here in Liège today is quite remarkable. I think the organisation were a little bit upset. They didn't feel there were that many people turned up to the team presentation the other night, but I think today they will be happy.
Yes, well, they've come flooding in. We're not very far away from a number of countries in this part of Belgium, including Holland, which is literally less than half an hour's drive away, and Germany, and, of course, Luxembourg.
And, of course, this is a strange part of Belgium because it's known as the Wallonia region, but, in fact, there are two different languages here. We predominantly French, but, you know, they do also speak German here.
And that's what Jens Voigt wants to see. Mind you, the numerals are the same in both languages as he now looks up towards the clock and drives in towards the finish. 7:21. It's a good ride by Jens. 7:28 his best time. He's realised it. That's why he's got out of the saddle to try and rip over the line. It's just slipped by, and he just comes over the line. 7:32 he might get there as Voigt crosses the line. A very, very good effort for the ageing Jens Voigt. He is a remarkable guy.
He certainly is. I might have led you astray there, Phil, because in fact he's 40 years of age.
All right, so we're looking down here at the station, which is one of the most modern in this town, of a great historical effect. We'll take another break. Jens Voigt is in with the second best time, just 4 seconds off the lead of Andrei Grifko. So Grabsch is coming in now, and a big effort by him, but he's a little bit off the pace, Paul. 7:40. The clock not actually stopping as he goes through, but he's still around about 12 seconds slower than Grifko, who recently won the time trial championship of the Ukraine and done a good ride from position number 4.
He certainly has, and his average speed is quite amazing too. 51.5 kilometres an hour, 32 miles average speed. This really is a drag strip course this afternoon, Phil, I have to say, made for some of the great specialists. And we talked about Cadel Evans starting at 7 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock local time. Well, 1 minute before him is the man we all believe is the big favourite to win this opening prologue time trial, and that, of course, Fabian Cancellara of Switzerland.
Carsten Kroon out on course here. The Dutchman is now on Team Saxo Bank. He's moved around a bit these last few years. Steve Cummings of Team BMC, who will ride on the same team as Cadel Evans, delivered a good ride. He slipped through with the second best time, just 3 seconds off the time of Grifko. And Steve Cummings, who rode the Giro d'Italia, he missed out on the British Championships to prepare for the Tour de France. Looks as though he's come with a fine pair of legs.
You know, well, all of these riders starting early on, riders like Cummings, he will be trying to set some time points for Cadel Evans, for example. The riders who start towards the latter end of the afternoon, they want indications of what sort of speeds they can take the corners in, what the weather direction, what the wind direction is like, and how much of a risk they can take going into certain corners. This all gets fed back to the team leaders later on in the afternoon once the early starters have finished.
Well, Carsten Kroon here, setting off on his 5th journey around France and the other countries that often interrupt the route of the Tour de France. First rode it back in 2002, Carsten Kroon. The only time he's ever worn a leader's jersey, and he's won one stage as well, was he led the King of the Mountains briefly back in 2005. Now, as Carsten Kroon comes up, this is not his speciality. He's a very good rider in the mountains. He'll be a great teammate, too, on the Saxo Bank team. But for the moment, he's a little bit outside the best time of 7 minutes and 28.4 seconds as he slips down here. No, he'll be outside the top 20 now as Carsten Kroon comes home. He won't be too worried about that.
Well, he's a man who will be a helper on the team once they go further into the Tour de France here this afternoon. In a few moments' time, of the British rider David Miller from Garmin Sharp, a brand new sponsor just before the start of the Tour de France, should be climbing up into the start house. He's no stranger to riding well in the opening stages of the Tour de France. In fact, a few years ago, he in fact won the opening time trial. It was a very long time trial around Futuroscope.
Yes, Miller has had a couple of stages in the Tour de France. He also won in dreadful wet conditions when he won the time trial at Nantes back in 2003 as well. There's the standings at the moment, with Grifko still the best time. Steve Cummings from the UK, and more importantly from Team BMC of the race defending champion Cadel Evans second. Jens Voigt amazing again, holding third at the moment. And then the sprinter Kittel fourth, and the former champion of Germany Christian Knies in 5th. That's the standings at the moment, but there's plenty of riders out to spoil the show. There's about 130 riders still to go. This is David Miller, who rides on the Garmin Sharp team, the brand new team on the block starting the Tour de France. They were the team winners last year, and so we'll see how they get on this long journey around France. David Miller, we expect something good from him, I think, Paul.
Well, I think he's very motivated to ride well in this individual prologue time trial here this afternoon, Phil. But the problem is, once you start to get a little bit older in years, 35, 36 years of age, as David Miller is, you lose a little bit of your top-end speed, and the longer time trials are much more to his liking.
3 stage wins in history since the year 2000 in the Tour de France. He should have won in 2000 the time trial prologue stage, but he unshipped his chain. I think that cost him dearly indeed, it did. So as Miller gets underway, there's a nice little shot of the River Meuse and everybody enjoying themselves. Welcome back to the time trial. Tom Danielson there, now facing up to his second Tour de France. He rode last year and he finished in 8th position, and now Tom Danielson goes at 10:05, and that's Eastern timing. Here in Liège in Belgium, it's just on 4 minutes past 3 in the afternoon at the moment. As he gets ready, and he'll look forward. He could deliver a good one. We've rejoined David Miller out on course here. This is the teammate of Tommy Danielson, who's on the Garmin Sharp team. They changed their name before the start of the Tour de France. Grifko is still the man that matters at the moment. So as we get on with the starting house at the moment, we're now seeing Tony Galopin has gone underway. Second career Tour de France for Tony Galopin. Well, the sun is out and David Miller on course as we look now at Tony Galopin here in his second Tour de France. I suppose you could call it the top and the tail of experience there, Paul.
You certainly could. He comes from a very big cycling family. In fact, his uncle is one of the team managers on this squad, but it's not because of his uncle that he's got himself a place on Team Radio Shack Nissan. It's because he is a very good sprinter from France.
Yes, he is, and he's only marginally slower over the season than Mark Cavendish, so we could see this man try to take Mark Cavendish on as the race unfolds. Well, still looking at the time done by the champion of the Ukraine, Andrei Grivko, at 7 minutes 28, and he was the fourth man to start the time trial today. And here we are, Paul, just on an hour in, and he's still the leader.
Yeah, but David Miller has just gone through that first time check, Phil, only 3 seconds adrift. Now, he's a very experienced professional bike rider when it comes to the individual time trial like this, and he may well be able to dose his effort a little bit better over the second part of this course.
Well, it is showing a little bit quick as they come up towards the line. They've gone down the river. We haven't seen many shots of the river down by the quay there, but you can see the crowds here. They've come across the Place de Saint-Lambert and racing down towards the finish here. They're on the opposite side of the boulevard for the finish than the way they went out of the start house. The actual split is about 400 yards apart between the start and the finish on opposite sides of the dual carriageway, which is right downtown in Liège. Now, let's have a look at David. This is looking very good, Paul. He's just coming up to 7. He's got to get round there, Paul, in about 28 seconds.
Well, all of these corners, Phil, it's all about cutting them as quickly as you can there. He's going to be very, very close indeed, David Miller. I tell you what, he's going very fast. His machine is extremely aerodynamic. Not the right time for a little bit of picture break up.
As he faces up now, he's got to get there in just on 18 seconds. If he looks up now, he will see the board, and if he can just pull something special out, David Miller will go top of the leaderboard. Remember, he's off to the Olympic Games. He hopes very shortly to ride the time trial there. Now Miller races towards the line. It's just going to slip by, which again highlights the time done there by Andrei Grifko and Steve Cummings of Team Sky, who's also British from the Wirral. And as he drops his head there, he's going to slot in 3rd or 4th. We'll check on that in a moment. So David Miller has actually slotted in fractions of a second quicker than Steve Cummings, so he's gone into 2nd place. Grifko has held on though, and 3 seconds is the gap to Miller and Stephen Cummings, with Jens Voigt in 4th place. And this is now Brett Lancaster out on course for the Green Edge, the Orica Green Edge team, the Australian here, as we look down briefly here at the section of the Mars River, or the Meuse, it depends which language you speak. down in the centre of Liège. Well, they've tried to change the overall, but they haven't done too well so far. Dave Miller up into second. Cummings is down to third. Sunday, July 22nd, the Izod IndyCar Series continues on the NBC Sports Network. Will Power looks to defend last year's win from the streets of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. It's the 2012 Edmonton Indy, Sunday, July 22 on the NBC Sports Network. Now let's have a look at our Road ID Challenge fan predictions, see who you thought would win today's stage. And take a look at that. Hey, you're going for Pavin Cancellara, 21%. Brad Wiggins, I'm surprised it's only 11. Cadell Evans, 8. That's about right. And Peter Sagan, only 5%. Hey, watch out. Sagan is good, believe me. Head on over to roadid.com/ride to make your prediction for tomorrow's stage. And you'll be entered to win daily prizes and a 2013 Trek Madone. So that's a competition, a game to look forward to. Anyway, as you can pick tomorrow's stage winner, I hope. Back out on course. The crowd has really shown the colours today, as Paul Sherman has said. Little disappointed by the people that turned out for the prize presentation on Thursday, but today they've made up for it. They're here to watch the show. We've met many Australians, Americans, South Africans, all here to enjoy the splendour of 3 weeks of the Tour de France.
Well, high-speed trains are all this is region is all about. And Brett Lancaster out on course is an extremely fast man when it comes to individual time trialling. The railway station of Liège is not too far away, Phil, and it hosts the arrival of the high-speed train which goes from Paris all the way across to Cologne. I wonder about this man, because Lancaster is a very fast man, and he's formerly been a great... About 60 seconds it will take him to cover 1 kilometre, Phil, so it very well could be that we could be seeing a brand new time.
Well, Brett Lancaster is no stranger to winning at the first day. He won the prologue of the Tour of Italy and wore the pink jersey for just the one day in 2005. He's heading up now towards the finish. Thibaut Pinot for FDJ. He is out on course as well, as the riders now complete the distance.
Well, Pinot out on course for FDJ, but Brett Lancaster went through the first time check, Phil, with the fastest time, 3 seconds faster than Andrei Grivko. So we could very certainly be seeing a brand new best time for Orica Green Edge, the Australian squad, because Lancaster is a specialist at the solo effort. Here he is.
Well, Orica Green Edge, the all-Australian team in the race. Not all Australian riders, I hasten to add, but they are in the race, and this is very much one of a record entry of 12 Australians in the Tour de France this year. Now, can Lancaster deliver? I think he might be able to. He's done it before in the prologue. As we look for 7:28, 7:23, he's in. Brett Lancaster is the new leader. What a great start. 7:24.99, 51.8 kilometres an hour. That's about 32.5 miles an hour. Lancaster has refound his old form. He turned pro back in 2002.
Yes, he's a great time trialist, a great man from the track, and now he has set the bar that little bit higher.
Wow, well, Brett Lancaster won the prologue of the Giro d'Italia in 2005. Then he broke his collarbone in the Circuit of the South the following year. He's now looking like he's back on form. 7:24 for Brett Lancaster. Andrei Grivko down to second. David Miller is down to third. Let's have a look then. The Americans riding in at the 2012 Tour de France. George Hincapie setting a record with his 17th visit to this race. Nobody's ever done that. TJ Van Garderen, we expect things from him on Team BMC. Chris Horner could be a podium finisher. So too Tom Danielson. Sprint wins for Tyler Farrar. High finish for Van der Velde. Maybe even today for David Zabriskie. And what about Levi Leipheimer? They are big names in the world of cycling. So there is Dave Zabriskie just checking his start time. Well, I can tell you, Dave, it's 10:49 a.m. I guess you're going to work on Eastern time as he now moves back. And Alan Piper, a former Australian rider in the Tour de France, they're looking after him. So Zabriskie goes away. He's again the champion of the time trial from the United States. His 7th title recently scored in America. Getting back out on course, and once again now we're picking up Andre Greipel here, and you can see by the way those shoulders are rolling, this is not an easy ride for him, and he's not saving any energy for his sprints. He's pushing on. He's a big winner of the year, Andre Greipel. He's well known in Australia for his complete victories in the Australian Santos Tour Down Under. Now he's here, not far away from his native Germany, as once more we move out now to Boysenhagen. And Eddie is now looking for a good time, unexpected. He did lose his time trial title a week ago, Paul, but he's still a great time trial rider.
He has just gone through the first time check with exactly the same time as Brett Lancaster, almost to the second, almost to the hundredths of a second. So this will be an interesting time by the youngster from Norway.
Well, we're saying it's Boysenhagen. If it is, he's wearing the number of Chris Froome here, Paul, but it is Boysenhagen, so there's a switch of numbers there, and I don't know whose fault that would be, but it may be the team's from the ring number off. But anyway, the way he's riding here, he's really driving with. This is across the Place Saint-Lambert again. It's a nasty. Had it been wet here, this place would have been very slippery indeed. And there's a full left turn there before he straightens up to head towards the finish. There's a couple of K to go.
Well, this is the struggled position of Andre Greipel, but watch out for those powerful thighs and calves of his when it comes to exploding into the finishing straight at speeds approaching 65 to 70 kilometers now, almost 45 miles an hour. His top-end sprinters. Look at his position here, Phil. It looks to me as if he struggled out on the course. He wasn't in the top 10 when he came through the first time check, so I would not expect a top time by Andre Greipel here this afternoon.
It's the Boysenhagen's time. We won 0 time, same as Lancaster at the check, while we swing up towards the finish now. This is Andre Greipel coming through. Greipel, I don't think, is going to affect the leaderboard here as we go back to the man who's carrying the number of Chris Froome, but it is Edwald Boysenhagen, and he could well be the new best time when he arrives at the finish.
Well, that's very, very strange. He's almost getting himself onto the tail of Andre Greipel here, who actually has done a pretty impressive time. He's got to beat the time of Brett Lancaster, 7:24, but the clock continues to tick by here as this man from Germany battles with his machine. And I really am a little bit surprised that this interesting change of numbers, because it says Bosenhagen on his number, but in all of the race manuals it said he should be wearing number 102.
That's a first for the Tour de France for me. Anyway, Andre Greipel crosses the line at 7 minutes and 36 seconds and just on 12 seconds off the pace of Brett Lancaster. I have a feeling, though, that where this man is right now as we pick him up, the time of Brett Lancaster will stand for no more as Boysenhagen heads up towards the finishing line.
500 meters is going to take him approximately 30 seconds to cover that, because these riders are riding at an average speed of 60 kilometers an hour in the final hour of the race. He's been in the saddle for 7 minutes and 5 seconds. This is going to be a pretty impressive ride by Bosenhagen.
The time of Lancaster, 7:24.99. He was 0.2 of a second slower than Lancaster at the check. Has he found the difference to take it? He heads up towards the line. 7:24 the time to beat. He gets it just on the line. 7:24.32 against 7:24.99.
0.67 of a second gives it to the man from Norway and Team Sky Pro Cycling.
Well, look at that. Edvald Boysenhagen just creeps under the radar and gets the best time there, but only by about 0.06 of a second. There it is, 7:24 for World Cycling Times. It's the same time for Brett Lancaster. 4 seconds to Grifko, Miller down to 4th, Steve Cummings down to 5th, but we have a new leader as we go to a commercial break. Come back and rejoin us. Remember, the big names are still to go.
So things getting interesting out on the course, faster times, the leaderboard is changing. Things about to get interesting and informative inside the studio. It is time for Ask Bob Keith, presented by Head Sweats. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's fire away. Question number 1. Leslie Cohen, she wants to know about this year's route. Has been designed to give a slight edge to time trial riders. Was this done purposefully? And who chose the route?
Well, ASO, the French organization that owns and operates the Tour de France, they designed the race route. Some years it favors the climbers, some years the time trialists, but the strongest man always wins the Tour de France. It'll be very interesting to see who comes out on top at the end of this year's tour.
1 question down, 2 to go. Cindy Sanderson, it seems like the riders changed teams quite a bit. Certainly this year that's been the case. does that make it difficult to find continuity as a team?
Oh, that's one of the challenges our sport faces. It's not like stadium sports that are a little bit more stable than cycling, but it does encourage new sponsors to come into the sport continuously. This year we have a brand new one. Orica Green Edge is their name. They have a number of fast sprinters. Watch them to contend for races. It does make it hard for the commentators, however, to follow the races year by year. It seems to change regularly. And even the Garmin team has a new co-sponsor. They're called Garmin Sharp now. They started the season as Garmin Barracuda.
Real quick, one last question. The most delicious question of all, Bobke. Have you ever tried a stroopwafel dipped in schnapps? I hear back in the 20s this was a staple of Dutch racers.
Well, Belgian waffles dipped in schnapps are the other white meat. They're not a breakfast food, but they're an absolutely delicious dessert. I've had them before, but never in a bike race.
A little known fact, he actually dips every single meal, 3 a day, in schnapps. Delicious. It's the way to go. Good way to start your day. More racing coming up after this.
Ask Bob Key is brought to you by Head Sweats, the world leader in performance headwear. Submit your questions to Bob at NBC Sports Cycling on Facebook. Plus, use the promo code BobKey at headsweats.com and receive 30% off your next purchase on all headwear. Restrictions apply.
Stake. After intense rehabilitation, each of these determined athletes arrive at the Prologue having done everything in their power to be in top form for today.
The chance is there to take the yellow there and maybe to keep it for 1 week or even longer. I know that, but I think also Fabian knows that, and they will be a good fight and will be a good show for the spectators.
It's the best time for Tony Martin, and that is going to take some beating.
For sure, like, I would like to win the opening Prologue in Liège, like I won it many years ago.
Fabian Cancellara has gone through with the best time, and he's just due in now.
Here is the winner. Oh. Here is the new yellow jersey, Fabian Cancellara, Phil, 23 years of age.
I came to Liège in 2004 as an underdog. Everyone talks from Lance and Ulrich and Lance and Ulrich and all the big names, but I came there and bang.
Doesn't happen very often on your first race and the first attempt at the Tour de France that you get yourself the yellow jersey.
I beat him all and won by 2 seconds, and it was an amazing special day. And then you come back in the next year, and then it's just like focus on you. Everyone says he's the favorite, and yeah, that's another motivation I have, that when you're the favorite and to still show one more time that you could win it.
What an incredible ride by Spartacus.
Only one man left out on course now to challenge the time of Fabian Cancellara.
We both are the best time trialers, and last year I was a little bit stronger.
The German rider is going to win the World Time Trial Championships because Fabian Cancellara is going to have no answer.
He's the champ, but still, I mean, I saw a few TTs where I didn't have the same possibilities, like weather conditions. An example, Tony was riding the TT in Dauphiné Libéré. He was riding not in the wet. I mean, come on, that's simple. Even a little kid could say that that's not the same.
Can immediately switch in the next year, so for sure the fight will go on.
Yes, they both come back to the Tour de France recovering from injury. There's only 4 years difference in their age. 27 for Martin, 31 Cancellara. Cancellara has been the world champion 4 times and an Olympic gold medalist. And now Tony Martin is the reigning world champion. This is quite a challenge between the two of them. And may the best man win. 20th from the end, Tony Martin will start, and Cancellara will go second from the end.
As we now go a little bit further down, this man was formerly the champion of Spain in the individual time trial, Jose Ivan Gutierrez.
Yes, former time trial champion as well, as Gutierrez gets underway from Movistar. We'll see a lot of this team, I think. They've got 2 players for overall in Alejandro Valverde and the man that just won the Tour of Switzerland. Now he's pulled his, I think he pulled his foot off the pedal though. He might get a shot at that again, but he settled in quickly. No, we haven't. We switched shots here. So as we move further around the course.
This is Heimar Zubeldia of Radio Shack Nissan. He's finished in the top 10 in the Tour de France. Interesting tactics, I think, we're going to see on board Radio Shack Nissan over the next couple of weeks, Phil, because they don't really have a dedicated overall leader. Is it going to be Zubeldia? Is it going to be Chris Horner? Or will it be Frank Schleck? The rider's pick, from talking to 1 or 2 of the riders before the start this morning, Phil, is that Frank Schleck is actually holding some very good form.
That's what they're saying. He's diverted all attention from him by saying that he doesn't want to be the team leader. So we'll see as we're going to have a very interesting first week here, which is no major challenges as far as mountains are concerned, but very difficult stages. Well, that was an interesting move, wasn't it, Paul, by Gutierrez, because he's a great time trial rider, and yet he comes on course and he goes and just pulls his foot off the cleat. How many times does that happen at this level of cycling, when of course it shouldn't, should it?
Very, very rarely does it happen at the top end of the sport. When you jump out of the starting gate, though, Phil, and you're very nervous for a violent effort like an opening day prologue, that's when mistakes do happen, especially when you've got shoe covers on as well, because that creates a little bit of a problem too. But Gutierrez gets himself back into his rhythm, and he's not panicked at all by that. He knows a couple of seconds that you lose at the start, you can gain them a little bit later on if you take a few risks going around the corners.
Well, there's still the best part of 100 riders to leave that start house at the moment. As we continue to catch up now, back with Stuart O'Grady here, who's now riding his 16th Tour de France. He's worn the yellow jersey, he's won stages. As he continues out on course, I think we can go back and have a look what is going on. Next, very shortly, there he is, the world road race champion Mark Cavendish. He won't be starting in that jersey. He'll be pulling on his colours of Team Sky. He'll go in a moment. The 2012 Tour de France on NBC Sports Network is presented by Radio Shack. Get the phone and plan that's right for you with free expert support at Radio Shack. By America's Natural Gas Alliance, smarter power today. By the Le Mans Revolution, direct drive technology makes roller-based bike trainers obsolete. And by Road ID. It's not just a piece of gear, it's peace of mind. Enter to win a Trek Madone at roadid.com/ride. And here we go, the 100th man to leave the start house at the 198, Mark Cavendish, the World Road Race champion, a winner of 20 stages of the Tour de France, but none of them time trials, as Mark now makes his roll out here. And if you think he looks as though he's lost weight, he has. He's actually 9 pounds lighter than he usually is, and that's part of his preparation, he thinks, for the upcoming Olympic Games, which will be in London just a week after this. And there he is, Mark Cavendish, always saluting the sky. First ever British man to win the green jersey of the Tour de France, and he did it last year, and he was all smiles. He said not going to try and defend it this year. He then went on to win the Road Race Championship of the World, which he did in Denmark towards the end of last season. Another great moment in his life, and he hopes in 4 weeks' time actually, he'll get a gold medal in the Olympic Games. Now, we are hearing that Cavendish, for some reason, switched bib numbers with Edvald Boysen-Hagen, so I'm not too sure what's going on, because Cavendish is on our start. This is wearing 103. Well, in the 40th year of my coverage, I've never known that before. I'm totally confused, but I hope you're not. I'm just saying, Paul, that apparently Cavendish has switched big numbers as well now, so we'll have to get a new start list, because he's wearing the number of Edvald Boysen-Hagen, who's got the best time, and he's finished.
This could very well be a tactic by Team Sky to confuse the opposition, because I've never seen anything like this. And let's just check, that flag was upside down, by the way. I'm not sure if you noticed the Union flag, as it's called. You can't call it a Union Jack unless it's sailing off the back of a ship. Jose Ivan Gutierrez now, not a bad ride here by the former under-23 world time trial champion.
Well, as Gutierrez comes up, it's a good ride. We expected that from the former time trial champion of Spain, but it slots him in 21st place, 7:39.55, just a quarter of a minute off the best time of Boysen-Hagen. They seem to have had a little bit of a lottery going on in the Team Sky bus today, exchanging numbers. If they have put the wrong numbers on, they will be fined by the organisation. As we look here at the face of Mark Cavendish now.
Good time at half distance, 10th place for him, just losing 5 seconds out after 3.2 kilometres. So Cavendish is giving his all here. This is the second of the 180-degree bends that he's coming around there. Again, he's negotiated that corner extremely well.
Well, we can't see it, but Dan Martin in the start house, he should be starting at the moment, and he's gone as the 25-year-old in his first Tour de France, the Irishman here, who lines up one of only 2 Irishmen in the Tour with Nicholas Roach, the son of the 1987 winner Stephen Roach. Dan Martin has finally, he was left out last year, and he took it like a man when he was told he wasn't going for the American Garmin Sharp team. And I think this year, I really feel Dan Martin will challenge in the mountains in this race.
I was very impressed, Phil, with Dan Martin in the Criterium de Dauphiné, a preparation race for the Tour de France. When he crashed in one of the early stages, he knew he had to get through the Criterium de Dauphiné if he was going to be competitive at the Tour de France. And despite having his body strapped together with plasters all over his back, he rode through the next few days and he managed to finish that race. And I think he'll be an interesting character to follow when we get into the mountains in over a week's time.
Mark Cavendish now racing across the Place Saint-Lambert over the dry cobblestones. This is exactly the place where they presented all of the teams on Thursday evening in the square here. And now they're running the Prologue time trial right across it. Now there'll be a right flick and then a gradual left-handed sweeper that will bring them up down towards the finish on the opposite side from the start of the dual casual. The way that Cavendish is clipping these corners, Paul, like a Formula One racing driver, he's out for a time.
He's out for a time, definitely, Phil. And when you see he's gone inside of the top 10 at half distance, this man is not leaving anything to risk here. He's going to go as fast as he can. And he's trying to see whether or not he can get himself that little bit closer to his own teammate who has the fastest time, Edvald Boasson-Hagen. Bo Dog is his nickname.
5 seconds slower at the midway check on Edvald Boasson-Hagen. As Cavendish now races towards the finish, he'll be going through the last kilometre very, very shortly. In fact, in about 3 seconds, because there it is. So Cavendish now lining up for the last kilometre of the race.
Normally, in a race like this, over the last kilometre, these riders will cover the 1,000 yards, if you like it, in own money, in around about 60 to 65 seconds. He knows the time to beat. It's his own teammate, Boasson-Hagen, 7:24. He was 5 seconds adrift to half distance. I wonder if he's managed to axe any of that back in the second half of this course.
I've got a feeling he's just going to sneak outside of it, Paul, but in fairness, it's going to be a good ride, this, by Cavendish. I'd like to say he was racing so he can grab the yellow jersey in the early stages, but there's no time bonuses in the Tour de France this year, as it was the case last year. So even if you stay near the leaderboard, it's real time which will separate, and no time bonuses for the sprint winners as the week unfolds. Look at that face now as Cavendish comes up, and now he'll see the clock here. The time passes by at 7:24. He's not that far short of the finishing line, but Mark Cavendish, as he grits his teeth, knows he's got a very good result on his first outing in the 99th Tour de France.
The slimmed down Mark Cavendish, he's shed off 4 kilograms since the Giro d'Italia up to now, and that's about 8 to 9 pounds of weight, and he's come in 13th place, that, Phil. The question mark is, will that loss in weight have allowed him to lose a little bit of speed? I don't think so.
Well, good for Mark Cavendish there. He's up for the fight over the next 3 weeks for sure.
So the Manx Missile powered through the Prologue, really looked like he was pushing it there. Comes in right around 7:31, which for him is pushing it. Obviously, he's the defending champ for the green jersey. He's teamed with Bradley Wiggins on Team Sky, who's going after the yellow jersey. He says he's not interested in going after the green again. If not, what is he interested in?
To me, I think that's kind of a psychological game. He's playing, you know, probably with the Orica Green Edge team. They're really going to be bringing things together, setting up Matt Goss for field sprints. I think, you know, Cavendish is really trying to take pressure off his team in those flatter stages so that they're not being looked at as though they were HTC from last year and having to bring it back together for a field sprint. I think he's just going to try to key off some of the bigger teams and again, take pressure off the, you know, the quest for yellow with Brad Wiggins.
If Cavendish isn't going after the intermediate sprint, say he's just going after stage victories, can his teammate Bradley Wiggins still go on and win the yellow jersey if you have this sort of two-headed monster?
I think that it's possible. For Mark Cavendish, he's been able in the past to win sprints without a big train. We've seen it periodically, a lot more this year than last year when he had a whole team dedicated him on HTC. But in Team Sky this year, he's had to pick his moments, and he's come through with a lot of very high-quality wins in stages. I think he'll be able to do that in the Tour de France. It will not be nearly as simple as it has been in the past, so it's going to be very complicated. He's going to have to key off the other trains throughout the race, but he has a lot of opportunities, and he is, as his own admission, the fastest man on 2 wheels. I have a lot of confidence in Cavendish. 4 stage wins minimum for Cav. You've heard it right here.
Wow, that would bring him to 24 career stage wins. He's talked a lot about color. He's talked about the yellow for Bradley Wiggins. He's talked about not going after the green, and he's talked about going for the gold at the Olympics. More race action coming at you after this.
Next Saturday, Major League Soccer continues on the NBC Sports Network. Led by scoring sensation Freddy Montero, Seattle looks to tame the Colorado Rapids. Next Saturday, 11 Eastern on the NBC Sports Network. as we go back out on course once again here with Andreas Kloden now. Kloden really wanted to establish himself perhaps as one of the strong men, which he surely is, in the Radio Shack team. Kloden has been around for quite a long time now. It's his 10th Tour de France this year. He rode his first one in 2001 when he finished a highly creditable 26th overall, but since then he was 2nd overall in 2006. And is he going to give us a good tour around France this time around? Still the same time at the finishing line, 7 minutes and 24.32 seconds, which betters Lancaster's time of 7:24.99 seconds. There's nothing in it at the moment, just a hair splitting the top two. Kloden comes up towards the line. It is going to be a very, very good time because we're looking at 7:24 as the best time. Andreas Kloden is going to be very close. I think he's seen it on the clock now, but I don't know whether he can quite get to the line in time, but this could be in the top three. As Kloden roars up the line, the leader's time goes by, and he comes across the line. Oh, it's a bit further than we thought, so he slips away just a little bit. 7:32. He'll drop in around 6th place with that time. Nonetheless, a very good time indeed from Andreas Kloden, who wasn't featuring among the leaders at the first check. So Kloden is in. Chance to wind down from his huge effort today as the German goes away. Now that time wouldn't be possible on that bike down. That's an old ordinary, or as we always prefer to call them, a penny farthing. No change overall. Boysenhagen is the lead on the same time as Lancaster. Grifko is 3rd. Welcome back. Well, while we were away, Sylvain Chavanel, the champion of France, sprinted home, and he's got the best time by almost 3 seconds. 7 minutes 20.93 for Sylvain Chavanel. That will in fact be rounded up for the overall standings to a 4-second gap over Boysenhagen and Brett Lancaster. There's the confirmation. Chavanel, and it's only seconds ago he's finished. The Australian Michael Rogers just started. It'll be interesting to see if Rogers, 3 times a world champion, can better that as we actually go out on course to see Michael Rogers here. And 3 times the champion of the world. He's had 3 wins this year as well. It might be he can take on the time there of Sylvain Chavanel. So as we watch Anthony Roux as well, the man now behind the scenes having to go to sit in the hot seat, Paul, well, that would be Sylvain Chavanel, the champion of France. He's going to be pretty happy with that ride, but I wonder if Michael Rogers can snap it up very quickly off him.
Well, I have a feeling, you know, Michael Rogers, I think, has got the form that he had a couple of years ago. He's been a professional since 2001, but Sylvain Chavanel is the man to pull it out for the big occasions, and we saw it in 2010. He came back to be at the top of his game for the Tour de France, and that's probably what he's looking for here this afternoon. I do find it interesting, though, that Sylvain Chavanel says he wants to win a stage and then help Levi Leipheimer win the Tour de France.
Well, Anthony Roux, who's riding in his 3rd Tour de France, is under the kilometre to go as well as he swings past the enormous audience here. I don't think he's going to approach the time. He's not featuring at the halfway mark on the leaderboard, so a fairly routine day here for Anthony Roux. He'll look for breakaways once we get out onto the long road race stages starting tomorrow. Although the actual finishing line tomorrow, it's perfect for the spectators. It's about 4 miles down the road in the town of Seraing, and it's also uphill. In fact, the riders have been checking out the finish since they arrived here in Liège. And then we start to leave Belgium and head towards the French borders.
You know, I tell you what, Phil, we are talking, I think, of a renaissance of French cycling, because this man here, just 25 years of age, Anthony Roux, he won 6 races last year, including the Circuit of the South, and he is not a bad individual time trialist. France has got a whole host of youngsters at around about 23, 24 years of age, and I think they're building up to become a strong cycling nation once again.
So Anthony Roux coming home, the best time already gone by of 7:20.9 as Roux comes up just outside the top 30, 35th for Roux as he crosses the line, but incredibly fast speed, 50.1 kilometres an hour. That's almost 32 kilometres an hour for Anthony Roux. You know, those rides are really, really quick, although the time doesn't stand up with Chavanel. So here we now have Tom Danielson making his start just as Roux crossed the line, literally on the left shoulder of Danielson. Roux is underway. There is the race director, Christian Prudhomme. himself a great enthusiast of the sport, not just as director of the Tour de France. He loves cycling, and he loves to see the big efforts made by these riders. Now, Tommy D, as we love to call him, is underway. 34 years of age, finally got selection for his first Tour de France last year, and boy, he did so well. He finished 8th in the race, and he's hoping he can go better this time around. So he really does need to get a situation with a good time today. That's how it stands as Tommy Danielson takes off. 7 minutes 20 seconds for Chavanel. 7 minutes 20 seconds for 4 miles. Can you believe that? And Boysenhagen 4 seconds slower along with Lancaster. We'll take a break. We've now got 126 riders on course. So tomorrow morning, the Tour de France continues on the NBC Sports Network at 8 Eastern. There's a slight uphill finish tomorrow, and tune in nightly at 8 Eastern for Tour de France Prime Time on the NBC Sports Network. It may not be a day for the pure sprinters tomorrow, but time will tell. The finishing line, in fact, is only about 4 miles from where we're looking at these pictures here in Liège, in Belgium, of course. We've just seen the arrival of Michael Rogers, and he hasn't rocked any boats at all, as we go back down to the start house now and continue on with the coverage here. This also out on course now, Philippe Gilbert, who's also the new champion of France. He has also just made his start as well. So this is Pierre Roland, who set the new trend for this team last year, Europe car, because he won at Alpe d'Huez, and that was where he established himself. He went on last year to win the white jersey in the Tour de France. There are 35 riders who qualify for that competition this time around. The big news was, not by finishing 10th last year in the Tour, the French now expecting to win it this time around. That might be a little bit tougher. So Roland carries all the French hopes of a top performance this year after that 10th place finish last year. It might be a bit tough for him, but let's wish him well as he starts with the time trial. Very shortly, we're going to see Chris Horner going out the start house, and Chris Horner crashed out of the Tour last year, Paul, as we know, and he's back. Last-minute call-up by his team Radio Shack, and I think he will find he'll have a good team, a good season.
Yes, I think Chris Horner, Phil, was a little bit upset not even being on the long list for the selection for the Tour de France, but once Andy Schleck had a nasty crash out of the Criterium de Dauphiné and injury to his pelvis, Horner responded that he was ready. He sent all of his training information to the team, all of the reports from his coach, and they said, right, well, Chris, if you say that you're ready, you're a professional bike rider, you've got enough experience to know that you get around this Tour de France. So they pulled him back in at the last moment.
And his morale is very high too, and I think we'll see more of Chris Horner as he's on his way. As we look here at Pierre Roland, we should be getting close now to the man behind Chris Horner. That'll be the champion of Belgium. There he is in the start house, Philippe Gilbert. 24 wins last year. Hasn't shown that same form, but he's got it right, because a week ago he became the time trial champion of Belgium. Big moment for a Belgian rider in the champion's jersey right here in his own country.
Well, he's the champion of the individual time trial, but I would think, Phil, he is thinking about tomorrow, because there are a lot of people who have said that the race organisation here in Liège made tomorrow's finish tailor-made type of finish for Philippe Gilbert, but that was the Philippe Gilbert of 12 months ago.
Yes.
I wonder if he has timed his form exactly to be right for tomorrow.
Well, he did it last year. We had a similar finish at Les Alouettes last year, and he shot up the mountain and just pipped Cadel Evans to the line. It's a similar finish in Saran tomorrow, which is only about 4 miles from where we're sat, which is about 7 kilometres away. So they've all had a good look at the finishing line. Believe me, over the last 2 days, they know what is coming at them. So it won't be a surprise, perhaps, like it was last year.
He is a French-speaking Belgian. He was born in Remouchon, which is 25 kilometres or 15 miles away from here, at the foot of the very famous Côte de la Redoute, which is one of the most important climbs in one of the oldest races in the world, the Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Well, I guess the crowd has recognised him. Well, a little bit of a freeze on the picture there as we go into the trees, which is stopping the signals up to the helicopters above. As Philippe Gilbert gets underway, we'll get a time on him. He is a very good time trial. I'm not sure whether he can live with that incredible time that we've seen now from Sylvain Chavanel, which is the best time at 7:20. It's also the best time at the Czech as well, at approximately half distance, which is 3:35.
Well, the original railway station in Liège, Phil, was built in 1842, but it was severely damaged in 1960. This one was just built about 7 years ago to host the arrival of the high-speed train from France on its way to Cologne.
Well, it is impressive. I'm sure the snowboarders would love to come off that roof and jump down the bottom. But as we watch watching the pictures there of the station, we're back out on course now with Philippe Gilbert, who continues to go through this corridor of noise, everybody recognising their national champion. But, you know, this is a very international crowd of spectators. We have met a lot of people from the United States, from Australia, from South Africa, from New Zealand. We have a New Zealand rider, Greg Henderson, in this race. Amazingly, it's his first ever Tour de France. I can't believe it. He's been around so long. We'll be seeing him start as well. The
amazing thing is, Phil, this is a country divided by a language. Mainly two languages, Flemish and French, although there is a little bit of German spoken in the eastern part of the province of Liège. This man waves the flag for the whole of Belgium as a country. He speaks Flemish, he speaks French, and he speaks pretty good English. Pierre Rolland, a bit gingerly there going around that corner.
Oh, what a great time. We've lost our pictures that you may have done at home. We went under a tunnel. I think that's why. He looked very, very much as though he's going into that roundabout there far too quickly. This is the big circle. Look at that. Flick to the left, flick to the right. Stick your knee out and hope you get round this corner. That's where Roland went round, and he had problems.
That was an aggressive entrance into a corner by Philippe Gilbert. He's really pushing himself here because of the crowd. He knows he's respecting the home crowd here from Wallonia, from the Wallonie. He's a French-speaking Belgian, but he's wearing on his back the colours of the Belgian flag.
6.4 kilometres. It's such a short, explosive effort. You can't take any time out to just relax a little bit to recover from the effort. You're right into what we call the red zone from the minute you leave the start house. You've got to find that little bit extra on the day.
Pierre Rolland, yes, he won the Alpe d'Huez stage of the Tour de France last year, but probably the biggest title for him, Phil, was being the best young rider in the Tour de France as well, and that was a title he was very, very happy to take.
Back to the start house now as we catch up with Janic Brackovic, as he's another man that's moved on this year. Brackovic, he used to race under Johan Brunel, and now he's gone on to ride with the Astana team here. Astana, by the way, is the capital of Kazakhstan, which keeps the sponsorship from that country, and we'll find out who leads this team, but I think that Jakovic could be the leader. Alexander Vinokurov is back. That surprises a lot of people, but I don't think he wanted to leave the sport last year with the crash he had, which was very severe, so it's almost certainly Alexander Vinokurov's final Tour de France.
Well, Philippe Gilbert is going round these corners, Phil, like a man possessed. He's gone through with the second best time there at the first 3.2 kilometre time check. 2 seconds adrift.
Well, it's only 2 seconds. You can make up 2 seconds, especially when the crowd are riding the bike with you as he goes on towards the finish now. Philippe Gilbert second at 2 seconds. He may or may not know that, but the crowd will just shout him all the way. The adrenaline must be coursing through those veins now.
I would believe that all of these Belgian supporters here, Phil, are actually shouting on his back because they're keeping all that wind on his shoulder, now pushing him faster and faster. He's actually sprinting out of these corners as if he was going to win the stage in a bunch sprint here this afternoon. He wants to get the best time. He knows he's got to beat Sylvain Chavanel, 3:35, as he goes past the Palace of Saint-Lambert.
Well, the Frenchman leads on the Belgian team, and now the Belgian, the champion, is trying to take him off the top of the leaderboard. They're on rival teams. This is the team now of Cadel Evans. Cadel Evans has strengthened his team through the winter so he can try and win the Tour de France again, and this is one of the men he chose to ride with.
Phil, as an ex-professional cyclist, I can see the emergency, the energy that this man is putting into his pedaling style. He really is pushing himself. He's pushing everything to the limit as we go back to Pierre Rolland. Pierre Rolland has not done a great time here this afternoon. He's a climber. He's a man for the high spots of the Tour de France. Here, he's on the defensive.
Very much so, but he's conceding less than a minute to riders he may not respect when the high mountains come. But Pierre Rolland comes in 103rd there. That's almost last of the riders who have started. But Philippe Gilbert certainly is going to be challenging for that first place. He's looking to close 2 seconds to take the lead away from Chavanel, and either way he would be up above Boysenhagen and Brett Lancaster at worst in second place.
He has to do a good ride today because tomorrow is the finisher. It's a 1 kilometre uphill finish, and if he can get himself to the top end of the leaderboard here this afternoon, he could be dreaming about a yellow jersey on his shoulders in Belgium. That's why he's riding like a man possessed. Plus, of course, he knows 90% of this crowd filled there on his side.
Well, he lives literally just down the road from Liège. He knows these roads better than anybody else in the Tour de France, and arguably anybody else in town. As we're watching Philippe Gilbert, Chris Horner's also just finished there, as we're now waiting to see the arrival. So he's closed the gap on Horner. They started a minute apart, and there's no way they're remotely like that right now. As they go down, now he will get to see the leaderboard. Look at the face of Gilbert. Look at the clock, 7:04, and the time to beat is 7:20. This is going to be a huge effort by the time trial champion of Belgium. He might just pip Sylvain Chavanel on the line. It's going to be desperately close. 18, 19, 20, hits the line in second place. He comes in at 7:24. The clock hasn't actually stopped going, but I think it was second best. No, he's dropped away. In fact, he slowed. He slowed right down, Paul. You're right. Fourth best time for Philippe Gilbert. Hey, now, come on, make sure you sign up for our Discover Card Fantasy Cycling Challenge at nbcsports.com/challenge for the chance to win the practice phase prize this year. Starting the show is a Cervelo R5 or an S5 bike. And if you win today's stage, you'll receive a signed Dave Zabriskie time trial helmet, courtesy of Giro. Signed by Dave Z there, as he's still to go, by the way, and there's still the possibility of winning this as well. Richie Port underway now from Tasmania, a very good time trialist, feeling a little bit disturbed because he wasn't named by Australia for their Olympic team. The ironical thing is he rides for Team Sky at Bradley Wiggins, so he could really challenge and spoil the party for Cadel Evans now.
Well, he's a very good individual time trialist, Philly. A couple of years ago, he won the time trial stage of the Baby Giro. He finished 7th overall in the Giro d'Italia, and he won the Best Young Rider competition, first Australian ever to do that, and he is a good time trialist. He will be a man that Bradley Wiggins will count upon very, very hard over the next couple of weeks.
Sanchez now resplendent yet again in his national time trial colours of Spain. He regained this, or retained this title. He's had it now 4 times.
4 times champion of Spain. He's a magical rider to watch in the individual time trial. Many people say that he reminds them of the great Miguel Indurain, who won the Tour de France 5 times back-to-back, way back in the 1990s. And he was unbeatable in the individual time trial. I remember winning one individual time trial not far from here, Phil, in Luxembourg. He won that time trial by more than 4 minutes. There we go now. There's Luis Leon Sanchez. It's not a bad ride by the Spanish time trial champion. As he comes up, he knows the time to beat is that of Sylvain Chavanel, 7 minutes and 20 seconds. He's slipped away from that. But again, he too, Phil, I think, is the kind of rider better suited to the longer time trials.
It's too short and too quick for him. He's not a pure greyhound as he comes in, and only 40th place there for Luis Leon. But again, 50 kilometres now, 31 and a bit miles an hour for his average speed. And that is only worth 50th place today in the prologue of the Tour de France. So just how fast are these boys going to have to go to beat now Sylvain Chavanel? Just to remind you that the record for the fastest time trial, prologue time trial, is 55.152 kilometres an hour by Chris Bourman in 1994. That's about
34 miles an hour.
34.5 miles an hour, yeah.
This is Oscar Freire, not a great time trialist, but a man who has been 3 times champion of the world in the road race, and he's coming here, Phil, to fine-tune his form for the end of the season. He too is also on the Olympic list for Spain this year, and they reckon it could be his kind of a course.
One kilometre to go now, as we're looking at Oscar Freire turning here for home now. He can ride a good time trial, but there's no reason to do that today. He's not looking to win the Tour de France, as we should see Christian van der Velde. There he is in the start house now. He's about to make the start. The man from Chicago, who's had a 4th place finish in the Tour de France, a solid rider indeed, and on the newly named Garmin Sharp team today with their new colours, as the cameras quickly switch up to the finish of Oscar Freire. Van der Velde is 148th to go, leaving 50 riders still to take the start in this opening prologue time trial of the Tour de France. For the next 3 weeks from tomorrow, these riders will still be pedalling their hearts out, and then just a week later, most of them will travel to London for the Olympic Games. It is a very difficult period for a professional with ambitions in both events. Frère coming up here, you see, he can ride a good time trial. It's not going to win him a podium today, but it's still a very good time here by Oscar Frère, as he sports the bright red colours of Katusha, the all-Russian setup. Though Frère himself obviously is Spanish. Hits the line then, about 7:48 his time, and he concedes just on just inside half a minute to Sylvain Chavanel. Ivan Basso in the start house now. Again, having had a reasonably good Giro d'Italia, not by his own standards, as he now heads out on course. We'll see what he do. He won't be challenging in the prologue time trial. I think it's safe to tell you that. As we see the overall standings, they haven't changed since the arrival of Chavanel, who disturbed the leaderboard. The rest have all slotted in just behind him. The 2012 Tour de France on NBC Sports Network is presented by Proform TDF, the official training bike of the Tour de France. Visit proform.com to see more. By Physique, the #1 choice of the pro peloton. Visit physique.com to learn more. By Head Sweats, the world leader in performance headwear. Check out our new Super Duty collection featuring superior moisture management at headsweats.com. And by Competitive Cyclist. Get 20% off cycling apparel and accessories by visiting competitivecyclist.com/TDF and use the promo code TDF20. George Hincapie now in at the start house. 17th career Tour de France ball. It's a record, the Tour de France. George, I think, has stayed in the sport to do just that.
Well, you know, this is his second record of the year because he participated and finished the Tour of Flanders for the 17th time this year. He's 39 years of age. Just the other day, in fact, yesterday was his birthday, George Hincapie. He's a good time trialist, and I tell you what, this is an amazing record. He's beating the record of Joop Zoetemelk, who himself was a man who had a very, very long career.
Yes, the Dutchman Joop Zoetemelk rode 16 tours and finished every one. That's why George couldn't claim first place when he'd only done 16. So he had to hang around and do 17. Nobody's done that. George has the record. And, whoa, a little bit of a kick out the back wheel there for Ivan Basso.
Again, Phil, very, very lucky for the organisation here. Losing himself 10 seconds at half distance, Ivan Basso in 31st place. But for him, he's looking a lot further down the road. But again, the organisation very lucky that the rain's kept away.
Absolutely. Well, there he goes. Levi Leipheimer moves up onto the starting house here. He waits for his call. He will start at 36 minutes past the hour, so he's very, very close indeed to his start. So let's remember to keep up with the Tour de France. You'll need the most advanced digital experience of its kind, so go to NBCSports.com/TV TDF Live and get Tour de France Live. For a limited time, get Tour de France Live for $29.99. And then you can see all about what is happening here on the move to Levi Leipheimer, who is now waiting for his start as we've gone back out on course to see Ivan Basso, 4th this year in the Giro d'Italia, now preparing for his second 3-week race around the country of the year. And always a great competitor. He was 7th in the Tour de France last year. He has won the Giro d'Italia before. He has finished on the podium in the Tour de France. Crowd calling on the Italian here. He rides for the Liquigas Cannondale team as he starts to line up. You've seen the time of Chavanel sitting at 7 minutes and 20 seconds. It's gone by already for Ivan Basso. I don't think we should be surprised about that. He's not going to challenge Chavanel's incredible sprint around the course here in Liège. So Basso will be just happy with whatever the clock presents him with on the line. As he comes up towards the line, he'll just get inside 7:45. If he's lucky, yes, he is. 7:42 as he comes over the line. Now, let's go and have a look back at the start. The start of Levi Leipheimer now. Here's the man who had a broken leg in April. He recovered from it. He took part in the Tour of California. Huge cheer from the crowd there. He is a very popular man. He has finished on the podium here, albeit nearly 5 years ago now. Leipheimer's back in, and his teammate is holding best time on the day, Chavanel. Now, Leipheimer is the man who Chavanel has said he would like to win a stage and then give all of his efforts to help Leipheimer win the Tour. It is not an impossibility for Levi to do just that. Now, it looks as though Bradley Wiggins here is getting himself all in a mess at the moment. He's round the back of the start area, and he's all rewiring himself up on his bike. He's warming up at the moment just around the back by the Team Sky bus, where nobody can get to him except our television camera. And he goes, I think it's 11:07, he said there, which is Eastern time. And big pressure on Wiggins. Now, Tony Martins is another man who we are expecting to better the time of Sylvain Chavanel, but he's one of about 4 men well capable of doing it. They're all still to go.
Tony Martin and Fabian, they're both exceptionally good time trialists, but I've beat them before.
He's going to ride like a maniac all the way up to the finishing line.
What was that, Rocky 4? They're not a machine.
You see, he's not a machine. He's a man.
There's always a chance that I could get yellow again.
Well, Albacini started a minute ahead of Leipheimer. Leipheimer is in the closing meters of the straight here now as he charges up the last half a kilometre. So he could be on a par with the ride of Albacini of around about 11th or 12th place. But he is not going to disturb the leaderboard here. But he is a man of the longer time trials. All he's doing here is establishing his losses and keeping them as tight as possible for the long road that lies ahead. 7:20 has long since gone by. He's a little bit slower than Peter Velits, and he's going to slot in with a time very, very close to Albacini's time.
Well, that's the important thing, Phil, when you think about these guys. They really need to do it well in the prologue.
Hits the line. Oh, even worse than Albacini. He loses 21 seconds, 53rd place. This is Bradley Wiggins here now. He's shut out with his music, got his favourite music on, and he's just concentrating now on warming up. He knows the importance of the time trial. He literally knows every second will count to a final yellow jersey in Paris, which is 3 weeks distant. All he wants to do today is prove the form is still there after the way his season has gone. And he knows he's got to take on the best exponents in the business, and they're still to go. Well, look at the arrival now of Rui Costa. It's not a winning time, but it is a very, very good time here from Rui Costa. And you can't complain about this, Paul, from the Portuguese rider, Rui Costa. He's delivering a very good time. It's a long way up the home straight. He's slipping away a little bit at the moment. But even so, Costa is in for the long ride in the high mountains. He concedes only 17 seconds to a man he won't worry about later, Chavanel.
No, Chavanel has put a bar extremely high here this afternoon. He's had a great season, Rui Costa, though, Phil, with a 3rd placed overall in the Tour of Romandy, and then that recent victory in the Tour of Switzerland. Laid down that victory foundations in the mountains on the climb up to Verbier.
Well, we're getting very close now to the start time of a man in his first Tour de France, Peter Sagan, and we're all interested to see because he can ride a time trial and he can sprint. In fact, this day and tomorrow are 2 perfect days for Sagan to make it a perfect debut.
Yeah, he is a great talent for the future. He's had an incredible season so far this year. He won 5 stages of the Amgen Tour of California. Stages 1, 2, 3, 4. Lost it in the time trial, and then he won the final stage around Los Angeles, LA Live.
This is Nicholas Roach now in the start house, one of 2 Irishmen in the Tour de France. And we had a debate with Sean Kelly, the most famous of all the Irishmen, just before we came on air. This is the biggest number of Irishmen in the race, a total of 2 since 1992.
But the difference is that these 2 riders are related because they're nephews.
That's correct. Dan Martin, who's gone, and Nicholas Roach, who's about to go. And Nick Roach is really on form just at the moment. He's earned his place again in the team. He makes his start now. And with every pedal rev, bet your life, Dad Stephen will be going with him, who won the '87 Tour de France.
Yeah, Stephen Roach still one of only 2 riders to win the Tour of Italy, the Tour de France and the World Championships in the same year. And we had a drink with the man who, the other man who did that last night, Eddie Merckx.
We did indeed, and this is Bradley Wiggins dreaming of his first ever victory in the Tour de France. He said even if he wins today, because in a time trial you've got to go as fast as you can go. If you win the race, you get the first yellow jersey. But he says we're not defending it. He said, I don't fancy spending 3 weeks defending a yellow jersey around France.
But he will have to have another crack in the long time trial, and that's why people believe he could win the time trial this year, because the Tour this year, because the time trials are so long. This man could win the time trial, though, because Dave Zabriskie is a specialist.
So Dave Zabriskie is getting the count. To a nice cheer, Dave Zabriskie is underway now, and this man could deliver the ride that will spoil the fun for Sylvain Chavanel, who is still top of the leaderboard. In 2005, he won the opening time trial. He spent 3 days in the yellow jersey, and just a week ago, he became the time trial champion of the US 7 times. And by the way, he's a vegan. He doesn't eat any meat at all, or anything else for that matter. And now let's see just what sort of a performance he can come out. He does know, Paul, everybody taking part in this event, he's beaten before. He knows he can beat them.
He knows he can. He knows he's a specialist. This man is a tall, lanky climber from Nairobi in Kenya, who carries a British passport. This is the man we've been waiting to see what he can do in his first appearance at the Tour de France, Peter Sagan of Slovakia.
So Sagan starts the roar of the crowd. He goes down a minute behind Dave Zabriskie. One time trial is chasing another. Peter Sagan could deliver a winning time in the time trial. He's had 13 victories this year, including the Stage 1 time trial in the Tour of Switzerland. So they're out on course. We'll catch up with the times after the break, and everybody now is getting towards their start time. See you in a moment.
Some of the heavy hitters still to come here, including Bradley Wiggins, Cadel Evans, and the favorite in this race, Fabien Cancellara. So we saw Philippe Gilbert, the hometown hero. He was really aggressive in the prologue, but ultimately fourth at this point. What can some of those other riders learn from his race?
You know, it's not uncommon for a rider to use the prologue as kind of openers, you know, and I have a feeling, you know, what we're seeing today is his quest to win the stage tomorrow. I mean, he's really gone out and opened the legs up, attacked this course really, really hard. I think he's certainly going to be a rider to watch tomorrow. His form has struggled a little bit early this spring, but I think he's back with a vengeance here.
And you can see Gilbert kicking it up to speed there, using very aggressive cornering technique. Here's a hard right-hand bend, sprinting out of that, back in the drops as quickly as possible. It's pretty good technique for the man who's just been crowned in his first win of the season, the time trial champion of Belgium, Philippe Gilbert.
From what you've seen today, you mentioned going after it in a stage race tomorrow. Are you optimistic about his effort for tomorrow?
Yeah, it's a perfect finish for him. I mean, the last kilometer and a half is straight up. I think it's a great finish for him.
A little bit like perhaps the first stage last year.
Yes, very similar to last year's first stage that Gilbert won, got the yellow jersey. He did a very good prologue as well, so we'll see. Maybe he's looking forward to another yellow jersey if he can win the stage, and there's some gaps in the field to the other. He'll be in the top 10 probably at the end of the day. That was a good ride by Gilbert, and a good sign that he's back on form.
More race action coming at you next. We will see some of the favorites in the prologue to the 99 Tour de France.
Enjoy the ride with us now, everybody. We're taking the riders to the last man to start now, Cadel Evans. We are in to the last 25 riders to go. Frank Schleck in the start house. He was on the podium in Paris in third place, one step lower than his brother Andy. Andy, as we know now, is out with severe injury, a broken pelvis. Frank doesn't know whether he wants to lead the team or not. We'll find out. So looking at Peter Sagan out on course now, looking to deliver a surprise here in the time trial. It wouldn't surprise me if he won the time trial. I'll tell you, he's a very strong time trialist. And just leaving the start house, Paul, is Frank Schleck. We'll find out maybe whether he's going to be the leader of Radio Shack by the end of this day. What's this now? He's gone.
Oh dear, that's why he's lost 9 seconds as he goes around that corner. That's the youthful enthusiasm there, Phil. He was pushing it just a little bit too much. That's what sprinters do, and that's why he's only 32nd place at the first time check as we go to TJ Van Garderen, the American with the Dutch name, 40 kilometers, 25 miles away from Holland.
Yes, he comes from Boulder in Colorado. It's not really where he comes from. He comes up on the West Coast, but he's been named in the American team for the Olympic Games. It's his second Tour de France for TJ, and he's here to support Cadel Evans, or at least that's what they say. But, you know, if Cadel falters, TJ might be a man aiming for a podium finish. We'll see how he goes now. Here's the enthusiasm as he bounces over the cobblestone. He's got so much power, this man. He's ripping the bike apart. Peter Sagan now around the Place Saint-Lambert.
Yep, this is the palace, the provincial palace on the right-hand side. But I have to say, I keep keeping my fingers crossed for the weather this afternoon, Phil, because if there was a slight dusting of rain on these cobblestones, it would have been like watching the movie Gladiator, because there have been people all over the road.
Well, Sagan would have crashed there for sure had that been a wet sector of the road. But anyway, now we can catch up here with Dave Zabriskie out on course, and this is going to be an interesting one. Zabriskie not appearing on our computer, which may not be a good sign. As I say, sometimes they don't seem to slot in, but it's not a good sign. This is it. Time is off for Zabriskie.
Zabriskie's a lot better at the longer time trial, the 40, 50 kilometre, 30-mile time trials there. You might just notice the different skin suit he's wearing there. Well, in fact, he's a bit of a buff when it comes to comic books, and he's designed his American National Time Trial Championships jersey on Captain America.
Well, he hasn't designed his finishing time on the style of Sylvain Chavanel here, because Zabriskie is 12 seconds slower and counting as he comes around towards the finishing line. It hasn't been an outstanding ride by Dave Z, as we call him. As he comes up, he hits the line 51st place and losing 19 seconds.
Watch out for him, though, further down the road, Phil, because in the long time trials he will be a force to be reckoned with. He was extremely dominant in the Amgen Tour of California in the early part of this year when he smashed everybody in the time trial there around Bakersfield.
Now here comes Peter Sagan as he races up towards the finish. It's not going to be earth-shattering either, because already finished is Zabriskie. This man started 1 minute behind him. He's faltered en route. He's not a minute behind him, but he's also not going to have a great finish either, as Sagan sees the time as Chavanel passed by just about now.
Well, don't forget, remember this name, Peter Sagan. He is the man that we expect to ride extremely well over the opening stages of the Tour de France. He's not an individual time trialist. He's a fighter, he's a puncher, and he's going to be, I think, a very important sprinter on the early stages of the Tour. So yes, he may well not have posted the fastest time, 39th and losing 16 seconds, but watch him punch out of the pack in the bunch sprint days.
Well, if I was a betting man, Paul, I'd back him for tomorrow's finish. Now, the world champion, Tony Martin here, the pressure's on. He would love to win this as he now awaits the final count. Cheers of the crowds. It is Germany's literally just around the corner here. The all-white man in the world champion strip is Tony Martin now. He's underway. It'll be interesting to see how he tackles this, because he's looking to challenge the time at the first check of Chavanel's 3:35. And remember, Paul, he goes so far ahead of Fabian Cancellara. Cancellara will know his time before he starts.
That is a big advantage for the man from Switzerland, Fabian Cancellara, who will be the outgoing Olympic champion from Beijing when we go to London 2012. And Cancellara has made no bones about the fact he wants to win that title for a second time, and he knows the biggest challenger in London is going to be this man here, well, that man there, and of course that Tony Martin, the German world champion.
Alexander Vinokurov, the veteran of the Tour de France. He's known every aspect of the sport, from drugs through to winning many big races, and now riding without doubt his last Tour de France. Last year we saw him crash out, helped out of a ditch, and couldn't put any weight on his body at all. Now he didn't want to leave the sport like that. He's come back for his final tour.
Yep, 38 years of age, Alexander Vinokourov. He broke his femur in that very nasty accident in the Tour de France last year, and he was going to make that his retirement year, but that's why he decided he couldn't leave the sport like that by the back door, so he's fought his way back up to the top end of the sport. And Tony Martin now, Phil, is riding a very fast individual time trial. We'll get an indication at 3.2 kilometers. It's always deceptive to watch Tony Martin because he uses a massive gear compared to riders like Fabian Cancellara, who have a much higher cadence in their pedaling style.
Well, Tony Martin knows that a victory in the time trial will automatically give him a yellow jersey. That is his dream, because he was really left on a limb. We're looking behind the scenes at Cadel Evans here. Boy, he's got more sweat coming off his face than Niagara Falls there as he warms up now for the final shot. He's the last man to go of 198. He is the defending champion. Because of the shortness of the course, Paul, it is so important you get that heart rate up as you come to the line.
Yeah, you might look at the race handbook and say 4 miles. Well, what's that all about? That's not much of a race day, is it? But the day starts early on. He's already ridden the course a number of times. He's probably ridden his bike for about 2 hours in the morning, gone back to the hotel 3 to 4 hours before his start time. He will have had a meal, a high carbohydrate meal, probably pasta, rice, maybe some eggs thrown in there as well, but he's getting the engine as hot as possible to come out of this starting ramp fast immediately.
Well, he chases the 17th and last man to go eventually. Alejandro Valverde here is now in. Made his comeback this year in the Santos Tour Down Under, where he took 2nd place. His season has been a mixed one. He's had some good results. I feel in the Tour of Switzerland, he spent all of his time helping his teammate win it, Rui Costa. Now it might be time for a payback from Rui to help Alejandro win this.
Well, tomorrow, he's a name that could come up to the top because it's a 1 kilometre uphill finish tomorrow. It's going to be a finish for a strong man. But why not Alejandro Valverde, who beat Simon Gerrans to the line in the Santos Tour Down Under at the top of Alwalanga Hill, as they say in Australia.
Alwalanga Hill, yes, a nasty little climb, and they climbed it right to the finish. Well, he's on course now. He rides for the Spanish Movistar team. And the crowd are really warming to the occasion now, but it's been a long time since Sylvain Chavanel finished. He's had to sit behind the finishing area as we're watching Frank Schleck coming up, and we're not watching a great report here coming in from Frank Schleck. You know, he won the Tour of Switzerland once in a time trial on the last day, but he really can't ride a time trial. And see, he's just about outside the top 114th on the line for Frank Schleck.
And in 4 miles of racing, he's lost half a minute, and that means a big chunk of time off a lot of other of his main contenders. This is the man, though, Phil, a lot of people think could be the winner. He's gone through in exactly the same time as his teammate at 3.2 kilometres, Sylvain Chavanel.
So Sylvain Chavanel goes through, and we see the arrival of TJ Van Garderen. We expected a good ride off Van Garderen. It's not going to be the best, but it's going to be right up amongst it as TJ Van Garderen hits the line with a terrific time, 2nd best. That's a great ride from TJ, and Cadel Evans will be absolutely delighted with his new teammate.
This guy came to prominence in... Tony Martin's had a problem. There's a problem with his machine, and that has lost the Prologue time trial. He's lost 20 seconds there with a bike change. The world champion will not win the Prologue this afternoon.
He was gone through on the... And he's got a problem with this bike.
There's a replay.
It's a replay. I was looking at the time check.
Something jumped in there, and he knew almost immediately. He couldn't even think about what was going to happen. He had to change his bike. He was cool enough, though, to put his hand up to indicate to the mechanic, I've got to get a new bike right now, but his Prologue is over.
And I'd give you 20 seconds there, Paul. I reckon that's what he's lost. He went through with the same time as Chavanel, but not quite as quick in split second. As we watch Gretsch coming in now. Another good ride here as they race towards the line, but it's going to be a tight one. Remember this man, he won in the USA Pro Cycling Challenge, the Prologue in Colorado Springs last year, and it's not a bad ride. 5th place for him as he hits the line. TJ Van Garderen has upset the leaderboard at the moment. He's just arrived in 2nd. Well, it's all happening right now. The world champion has lost the Prologue. He can't possibly recover from this when every, not just second, but 10th of a second counts now. I reckon he probably lost, as Paul said, 20 seconds on that bike change.
If you want a dark horse name in the Tour de France this year, well, I'll utter the name Denis Menshov for Team Katusha. He's the Russian time trial champion. He won that title just about a week ago, and a lot of people say that he, too, is hiding some very good form.
Well, he's wanted to come back to the Tour de France. He is back in the Tour de France, and now he's got the chance of his life here. He is the new time trial champion as well, so for Russia. So Menchov underway. This man, Paul, over these last few years, he's either ripping the legs off everybody or he's a total disaster, isn't he?
Well, there's many riders have been enigmatic like that. Sylvain Chavanel has still got the fastest time at the finish line. He was equaled at 3.2 kilometers by his own teammate Tony Martin. Then all of a sudden, disaster struck for the German world champion.
Nobody deserves luck like that at the most important day of the year for in the Prologue time trial. The world champion off his bike for far too long. Here he comes now. He's not allowing any thoughts to creep into his mind. He's got to hold his concentration and drive up to that finishing line, and we'll see where he finishes, but he can't possibly get to the time of Sylvain Chavanel right now. That's a real shame for Tony Martin, because he's fought his way back from his injury problems. He's got back, he's got form, and then he has a problem like that.
The only goodwill he can take out of this is that he knows that the best time was reported by his own teammate, Sylvain Chavanel. They're on the same Omega Pharma quick step. If you look at the time here, Phil, take off 20 seconds, this would have annihilated the field.
Well, the time goes by now. That's the difference between winning and losing the Prologue for Tony Martin. He would have won, well, I can't say he would have won yet, but he would have got the race lead. He has only fallen short by 250 metres despite the stoppage. As he hits the line now, it is outside the top 35.
When you think about Frank Schleck losing 30 seconds in this time trial, this man lost 15 seconds on Sylvain Chavanel, as well as changing his bike.
Well, the world champion Tony Martin, can you believe that? A problem like that, it's surely lost in the Prologue, and there's still all of the top riders to depart behind him, including the defending champion of the Tour, Cadel Evans, and they'll be next. Well, we return down to the start house now as we look at Jurgen van den Broek here now, and he is a Belgian that the Belgians are saying is going to make a podium in Paris this time around, and I wouldn't argue with them because he can climb mountains very well.
He was 5th overall in the recent Criterium du Dauphiné in the Dauphiné region of France in the Alps, and everybody knows that that's an indicator of Tour de France form. The next man to climb into the starting house, Phil, will be Bradley Wiggins of the United Kingdom. We look here at the man who won the Amgen Tour of California, Robert Gesink.
Gesink also a man who is looking long-term to Paris here. He can ride a time trial, as he showed us in California. He won the California time trial stage there, but much further than it is today. Here comes the grit and determination of Alexander Vinokourov as he heads up towards the line. Another respectable ride from a man who's passing out. Ooh, he hits the line with a nice jerk. The 53rd place down the pan. The man in black, Bradley Wiggins. So far this season, he has never put a wheel out of place. He's now licking his lips. He said, bring it on. I want to start this Tour de France. Well, now he's about to do just that. Got tremendous support here. Just to the left where he is now, there's a whole block of British supporters, and they've got his nickname, Wiggo, all the way down in individual letters. Paul, he's got to give it his best shot. He can't afford not to. Cadel Evans starts behind him, and it could be even by default, but he could be the leader by the end of the day with the best time.
He wants to win the Prologue if he can, because it's a psychological slap in the face to everybody else. He's got a very aggressive, low-profile position there. He's come out, Phil, I don't think in recent years I've ever seen anybody come out perfectly in their preparation for the Tour de France. 3rd overall in the Tour of the Algarve in the early part of the season. He went on in March to win Paris-Nice. A month later, he was the winner of the Tour of Romandy. 2 months after that, he was the winner of the Criterium du Dauphiné. But it's all been about building up for this month. That's all he's dedicated his season to.
Last year, we left him on the roadside on the 7th day, nursing a broken collarbone. Jerome Coppel here, one of the rising stars from France, making his start. I wouldn't like to be chasing Bradley Wiggins right now, but that's the look of the draw as he now makes his way off down the road. Wiggins was the 11th man to go. Jerome is the 10th rider to start. We still have to come Ryder Hejadal, Vincenzo Nibali, Samuel Sanchez, Fabian Cancellara, and Cadel Evans.
Big names, all in the sport of professional cycling. But Wiggins, look at the front end of that machine. He's got his front brake behind the fork. All of these little adaptations made to make the bike as aerodynamic as possible.
Well, we're waiting for the check of Wiggins. A little way off yet, about a kilometre for Wiggins to go. And Alejandro Valverde comes up towards the line now. His time has slipped well away from the time of Sylvain Chavanel. Chavanel now is running out of people to knock him off the leaderboard. He's seen the world champion falter because of his problem. Valverde is in a distant 102nd as we go back out now onto the cobblestones here. We cross on the other side of the Place Lambert, and that is Wiggins in full cry.
This might be the point to remind you, Phil, that Bradley Wiggins was actually born in Belgium of an Australian father and an English mother. He was born in Ghent, which is right in the very heart of the Flanders. He now lives in Eccleston in Lancashire in the north of England, but he is a man who really adores the history of the sport of professional cycling. I asked him, Bradley, you grew up in London when your mother moved there from Ghent when you were 2 years old. I said, why didn't you become a soccer player? His mum said, Bradley, you've got it in your genes to be a cyclist.
And I think I couldn't disagree with that, as we're going to find out by the end of this day. Down at the finish line, where you can see the world champion being interviewed by the journalist as Gessing hits the line. Well, nothing special from Robert. 54th place for him, concedes 18 seconds, but again, conceding it to riders that don't really matter. Tony Martin will have big stories to tell everybody, but there'll be disappointing ones. Goodness knows what happened to his bike. Clearly a mechanical. Really very, very sad there. Something went wrong, and Wiggins has gone round the far end of the roundabout now and has made the turn and is sprinting away from the corner as he carries on. It looks to me now as though with a bike change for Tony Martin, he's going to be out of the hunt for the moment at least. That was his best shot at being in yellow.
I know you shouldn't be partisan as a commentator, Phil, but when you see a world champion in his own discipline like that having a mechanical failure, you've got to feel a little bit sorry for him. But he's got chance for revenge because there are 2 more very long individual time trials in the Tour de France before we get to Paris in 3 weeks' time.
And that is why that they're tipping Cadel Evans and Bradley Wiggins to be up near the winner's podium this year, because of the 100 kilometres, 62.5, 63 miles of individual time trialing. There's still a small matter, Paul, of getting over the mountains of the Alps, the Juras and the Pyrenees as well. Ryder Hagedal, without doubt the best Canadian and the Canadian of the year this year. Ryder won the Tour of Italy. That was the first ever by a Canadian cyclist, and that was in May into June, and now he's here at the Tour de France. The last man to do the double, by the way, was Marco Pantani in 1998.
That was when Pantani went on from winning the Tour of Italy on to win the Tour de France as well. Denis Menchov, as we've said, Phil, I think is a bit of a sleeper in the Tour de France this year. He's not going to win the time trial this afternoon, but that's not a bad ride.
That's not a bad ride, and I can't say it's a better ride for Wiggins either, who's just gone through the check in 10th place, but 6 seconds slower than Sylvain Chavanel. So that is a little bit of a shock ride there.
That's a bit of a shocker for this man, but he again is better suited to the long individual time trial. 10th place, looking for 6 seconds. He's in that low-profile position there, but it's all about the latter part of the race here this afternoon. I think he'll be a bit surprised when the time check comes through. It's a short, violent effort. Here's another man many people think could win the Tour de France, Vincenzo Nibali of Liquigas Cannondale.
Well, he's twice finished third in the Tour of Italy. He's once won the Tour of Spain, but he's never been in the top 6 in the Tour de France. And maybe this year, because he's dedicated his year to a top podium finish in Paris. And it starts right now for Vincenzo Nibali. Back up the road to Bradley Wiggins. The first time check saying he's 6 seconds off the pace of Sylvain Chavanel. As we go round the square again, he's about a kilometre and a bit from the finish, kilometre and a half from the line.
Well, if I was to say a course had been designed for a rider like Bradley Wiggins, this is the course. It's a sparse man's course. Ryder Hagedal as well, he has had to recover from riding the 3-week Giro d'Italia, which he won for Canada, the first time that has ever happened, and get himself ready for the Tour. I think he might be a little bit short on top-end speed in the first couple of days here because he's been away from competition since the Giro d'Italia. But once we get into the first week of this Tour de France, we're going to see this man, I think, being competitive.
Well, in the end, he won the Giro d'Italia on the last day, which was a time trial, and he took the jersey away from Joaquim Rodriguez on the time trial. Of course, he didn't win the time trial either, but he did win the Tour. A stage race is all about consistency, not winning necessarily on the day. It is possible to ride the whole 3 weeks and never cross the line in first place, but you still have the fastest time for the course. So stage race riders think only of consistency.
That's the important thing. It's like having a big engine in a car. You can't go out and race like a maniac on some days. You've got to make sure that engine is perfect all the way through to the end. Jürgen van den Broek, possibly a tip for for the podium. He has lost a little bit of time here in the individual time trial around Liège this afternoon. I don't think he's going to be too happy with his opening day in Belgium. Sorry.
He said in France, but you're quite right. It's in Belgium for the Belgium. Van der Broek crossed the line, loses 20 seconds, but don't forget, it's to whom he loses the 20 seconds. He's not worried about Sylvain Chavanel or Brent Lancaster or Menchov, maybe not.
Phil, I'll tell you what, Bradley Wiggins has actually picked up over the latter part of this course, and look at this time. It's going to be very, very close indeed as he comes around inside the 150 to go.
If he has lifted it, he was 6 seconds off the pace at the check, and now 7:20 is the record. Surely he is going to go inside the time here of Sylvain Chavanel. He is coming up here faster than the Tran of Grand Vitesse down in the station. Wiggins hits the line now. He is in first place, 52.3 kilometers an hour, and look at that, Paul, by just about half a second quicker than Chavanel.
He was 6 seconds faster than Chavanel over the second half of this course. He went out prudently, he went out carefully, not pushing himself, and he saved all of that acceleration for the last part of the course here this afternoon. So Wiggins now all of a sudden 0.42 of a second is the fastest man. What, though, Phil, is Fabian Cancellara going to do to this course?
Well, we're going to find out. Here's the rather youthful face of Thomas Voeckler, who was fourth in the Tour de France last year and unlucky in the end, not to podium, I guess, outwitted by the Sheck brothers and by Cadel Evans. But he is a character, this man, and he held the jersey for a long time last year as well. And so he is underway, and we're delighted to see him in the race, the Frenchman, because he's had a knee problem. He's got over it. His start was in doubt within a week of this event, and he says, my knee's fine, I'll be in Liège, and he's underway.
Well, that was the reason they pulled him out of the Criterium du Dauphiné. Cadel Evans will be the last man to start. He climbs up. Just in front of him should be a certain Fabian Cancellara waiting for his turn to start.
There he is in the start house. You can't see him behind the start referee there. That was the steepest hill Cadel will climb all day there, getting up onto the start ramp. Everybody goes a minute apart. The Olympic champion, he will go to London to defend that championship, and he dreams of winning it again. 4 times the world time trial champion. 4 times he has won the first day, the time trial in the Tour de France. Is it going to be 5? His whole career started right here in Liège in 2004.
This man had a tough start to the season. He came out perfectly in the early part of the year, winning the Strade Bianche in Italy, then the 7th stage of the Tiro Adriatico. He thought he was going to be the winner of the Tour of Flanders, then all of a sudden Lady Luck threw him to the ground and broke his collarbone into 4 places. Since then, he's had to fight his way back up to the top of the sport. He recently won the Time Trial Championships of Switzerland, Phil, by a mere 2 minutes.
Cadel Evans, who last year became the first Australian to win the Tour de France, he returned home to a huge crowd in Federation Square. He couldn't believe it. He broke down when he arrived back home. The Aussies are back in force with a record entry in the Tour this year with 12 riders. But this is the man. And over these last few weeks, I think here we agree, he's ready. Cheers for Cadel Evans. He's very, very popular. The last man of 198 goes out of the start ramp, Paul. Cadel Evans has said he thinks he's ready. He knows what Wiggins has done, and I would think he can match it.
That is a big advantage, and look at the high cadence that he's pedaling at. We saw Tony Martin, the world champion in this discipline, a little earlier on using massive gears and a slow cadence. Cadel Evans has opted for a Lance Armstrong-type cadence here, around about 100 revolutions a minute. His legs are going round there, keeping his pace right up there to that 31-mile-an-hour average speed. He knows he needs to hold if he wants to rival Bradley Wiggins and possibly get himself in the top 3 or 4 of today's individual Prologue time trial.
He has put the work in for sure. Not long ago, we saw him in just behind the start house warming up. He seemed to warm up longer and harder than anybody else. He's launched himself from the ramp here now. He's not worried about winning the day stage. He is only worried about conceding time to Bradley Wiggins, who he sees as the man to beat. A little bit of an irony there. He rides under the Union flag and the flag of St. George of England.
Well, Cadel Evans will know there will be a lot of Australian flags out on the course here this afternoon as we go back. Ryder Hagedal has put in a fine performance here. He's not going to beat Bradley Wiggins on this occasion, but he's announcing himself, Phil, as a contender for the top position in the Tour de France this year.
Well, he said, I can win a Tour de France. He didn't make it clear which one. Well, he's in this one, so maybe we should start thinking now. 12th place for Ryder Hagedal. Perfect start, if you want my opinion, to his prologue here. And now tomorrow the road races start. Vincenzo Nibali, he equally would like a place in the top 15 men by the finish.
There are only 6 men left on this course now, Phil. Vincenzo Nibali, the 6th rider from the end. Behind him, Michele Scarponi, Sammy Sanchez, Thomas Voeckler, Cancellara and Cadel Evans. But I wonder, we're all waiting with bated breath to see the time check. Nibali was 8th at the first time check there, losing 4 seconds. That is probably the best time trial performance he's done all year. This is impressive as he comes into the finish line. He won't be too far off. Much better time trialing than he put in the Amgen Tour of California early on in the season.
This has been his aim all year, a ride in the Tour de France. He knows he can lose the Tour de France in the time trials. He has to stay close to the top names as we go to the mountains in a week's time. And Nibali comes home. It is a great ride. 12th place at the moment for him. He probably slipped just a couple of places more before the finish. He'll be pleased with that.
He will not be dissatisfied with losing himself 10 seconds. He was 8th at the first time check there, just 4 seconds behind Sylvain Chavanel. But in fact, at that point, he was faster than Bradley Wiggins.
Well, there's the huge crowd down on the quays on the banks of the River Meuse. As we look down from the helicopter, nobody is rocking the boat at the moment on the arrival point at 3.2 kilometres on the Quai de la Goff. As Cadel Evans has made the turn, we saw him from the helicopter, accelerates away as he sees the whole flotilla of cars following the defending champion of the Tour de France. This man wants to do what he did in 2004. Fabian Cancellara is on a ride. Best time at halfway, 3 minutes 34. Well, that's incredible. Fabian Cancellara has come in with the best time, 3 minutes and 34 seconds at the check. He has ripped the legs off Sylvain Chavanel, but only by a second, but he should be building on that. As the riders continue now to come down, it is all a matter of now. This is Scarponi coming in. As Michele Scarponi, who was given the Tour of Italy on the disqualification of Alberto Contador last year, has had a good ride in the Tour of Italy again this time around. He finishes, but it's all about now whether Cancellara can beat the time of Bradley Wiggins and whether Evans can stay in contention. If we look at Cadel Evans now out on course, chasing Cancellara, knowing he's chasing the fastest man in the world over 6 kilometres. As Evans now drives on, thinking of the long road that lies ahead for the next 3 weeks before the final yellow jersey is awarded. That's the tight corner. Very, very good piece of cornering to me by Cadel there. He pushed that bike right into the bed. What about this man? Little bit of a speed rock here. So let's just have a listen into the Nissan in-car camera.
Andiamo, veloce Fabian, andiamo. Via spingere, dai, qui il vento è dietro.
He's talking to Cancellara.
La forza Fabian, la forza.
He's telling him, go faster, you have the strength, keep going on the speed.
Posizione della testa, via deciso Fabian, andiamo. Dai Fabian, dai, bene qua, bene, perfetto.
Yeah, and he's telling me that you don't need an interpreter, do you? He's just telling me that he's doing it perfectionist. He's flat out to go harder.
Andiamo.
And he's at 1 kilometre to go. 1 kilometre to the finish. Fabian Cancellara's career started here in 2004. We've known so much about and enjoyed this man since then. Now he is heading for the best time again in Liège. Paul, he can't lose. I don't think you shouldn't say that, should you really? But as I say, his career started here in Liège. We're watching the finish at the moment of Thomas Voeckler. He won't live with the speed of the big man we call Spartacus as Fabian Cancellara heads up. Tommy Voeckler here has done a reasonable ride for him, but he's just going to be inside the top 100 as he hits the line. But it's all about the arrival of Fabian Cancellara.
Cancellara fastest at the first time check, but in fact, Phil, at the first time check, Cadel Evans was 1 second faster than Bradley Wiggins, but Wiggins took it off very quickly at the end. Look at the time.
Well, look at that. Inside 7 minutes as our cameras pick him up in the straight. It's going to be tight, but I think he'll get a shave it by maybe a second here. As he comes up towards the line, he knows what he's got to do. Cancellara, it's going to be his 5th opening day in the Tour de France. It looks like it. Best time, 7:13.46. Fabian Fabulous Cancellara.
Well, he smashed it. That was the biggest beating that anybody has shaved off the leaders. Look at his face. He looked, you just saw his eyes there, Phil, just looking up. 7 seconds in a race as short as this is a crushing of the opposition.
Well, Cancellara will, for the 5th time, walk off with a yellow jersey for tomorrow's opening day of the Tour de France on the roads. Cadel Evans, though, is pushing a great time here. He is quicker than Bradley Wiggins, who has just slipped into 2nd place behind Cancellara. And if he finishes in the top 3, then we know it, Paul. Cadel Evans is ready.
He is ready. I think he was playing a little bit of a possum when he rode the Critérium du Dauphiné, but he raced. He kept pushing Bradley Wiggins every day. The time to beat is 7:13. I can't believe that he's going to do that. But what's he going to do vis-a-vis his position relative to Bradley Wiggins? The big 2 names.
That is all that matters. His time against the favourites. Cancellara will not be winning the Tour de France only today. But what a way to do that. As Evans rides up towards the finish now, the time of Wiggins has slipped by at 7:20. Evans has lost about 10 or 15 seconds here to Bradley Wiggins. Hits the line in 13th place, so he concedes on the Bradley Wiggins there just about 9 seconds.
Yeah, but Phil, if you finish in the top 15 of the prologue of a race like the Tour de France, the indication is the form is there. You can't ride a good ride like this unless the engine is ready.
But it just shows you, Paul, the pursuit champion of the Olympics on 2 occasions over 4 kilometres, Bradley Wiggins over 6, really turned the screw over that last half.
He certainly did. He rode that last half probably faster than anybody else in this race here this afternoon, which is an indication we will have some very exciting long individual time trials further down the road in the Tour.
Fabian Cancellara is the man who will pull on the first yellow jersey of the 99th Tour de France. He has delivered what he did back in 2004 when we didn't really know him. It was his first Tour de France, and he won this stage in Liège, which was also a prologue. Now we've moved down the calendar a little bit, but he scored this time again. Bradley Wiggins, over those last 3 kilometres, was faster than anybody. He just kept lifting it, and in the end, he loses the time trial, but only just by 1 second. A little bit less, more than that.
This is the Proform.com post-race report, and this is the man who will wear the yellow jersey in Stage 1 on Sunday, Fabian Cancellara. Everyone said he was the favorite, but it's another thing to go out there, back everyone up, and blow away the field, Bob.
Tremendous amount of pressure. Coming back from injury, Fabian Cancellara delivers huge for his Radio Shack squad. He will lead the Tour de France Stage 1 prologue stage in this year's Tour.
So we look at the yellow jersey standings. Obviously, Cancellara's first. Bradley Wiggins, considered perhaps the overall favorite for the yellow jersey, comes in at 2nd. And the American, TJ Van Garderen, the 23-year-old, very impressive, Bob.
Very impressive ride by the young American. Philippe Gilbert showing some signs of life in 9th. The early leader, Andre Grifko, winds up 10th.
And as we look at 11 through 15, the name we're pointing out here is Cadel Evans. The defending champion finishes 13th, 17 seconds back of Cancellara. So obviously a huge day for Fabian Cancellara. He picks up his 8th career stage victory at the Tour de France. But Scott, how big is this for Team Radio Shack?
This is absolute best case scenario for Team Radio Shack. You know, success breeds success, and these guys are really going to be motivated to control the race, keep Fabian in that yellow jersey until they hit the first mountain stage.
It's time now for our Road ID Ride of the Day, and Bob, surprise, surprise, Fabian Cancellara.
No surprise about this. Fabian Cancellara dominating the proceedings. 7 seconds faster than 2nd place. Everybody else grouped on the same seconds. So Fabian Cancellara, a clear winner of the prologue, sliding it through the corners here. Don't try this at home. Explosive power on the straightaways, blistering speed coming out of the corners, and absolutely flawless cornering technique. He is the Road ID Rider of the Day.
Road ID Ride of the Day. And don't forget, if you want a chance to win daily prizes and a 2013 Trek Madone, head over to roadid.com/ride and make your prediction for tomorrow's Ride of the Day stage winner. So Fabian Cancellara absolutely dominant in the prologue, and afterwards he spoke about it with Craig Homer.
Fabien, for the 5th time in your career, you pull on yellow to start the Tour de France. How important was winning today in this victory for you?
Well, it's always important winning. I think that's how it is. I mean, I'm participating for winning, and I think with the memories 8 years ago, today was even more special. And I think just put everything on the road. It was what I want to do today, and to win. And I think it's always excited. Especially, when you're 23 years old, you come here and you win big lands, and then 8 years later you can show again that you're still able to handle this. It's a great day. It's a great day for me, for my family, and for sure a great opening for the team.
Speaking of the team, I mean, you mentioned the pressure that has grown onto your shoulders with all your success in the past 8 years. How important was this victory for the rest of the guys on your team and as an organization?
Well, how I said, winning is always important for everybody, but I think we just stick together like we've done now in the past. I think, our tour, I don't say we already have done everything what is necessary. We just had a great opening. I think a lot of pressure went away because with a big team like we have, is normally have pressure, but everyone has the pressure because on the end, everyone wants to have success, and to get success is never easy. When you have some downs, it's normal, it's even harder, but when you're on the top, it's, I don't say easy, but it's never easy. That's why we done the maximum, and I think the whole team done his effort on the back with everyone. I think that's how in the end is it, that now the tour can start, and tomorrow we're going to see a great Radio Shack Nissan Trek.
You always represent the jersey well. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fabien. A phenomenal day for Fabien Cancellara, and I certainly don't want to take anything away from him, but in the big picture, Bradley Wiggins' effort was equally excellent. He finishes second in the prologue. He sent a message today?
He sent a big message. You know, he absolutely topped all of his GC rivals, yet he's not in the yellow jersey, so there's no pressure there whatsoever.
So, Bob, as we look at his ride, what did you see out of him?
Oh, he had a perfect pedaling technique. He didn't take a lot of chances through the corner. Very prudent, but he did put a lot of power out there. He comes in with great form, at least for the prologue of the Tour de France. Great riding by that man, Bradley Wiggins. That's the way to start out your tour.
So we certainly consider him one of the favorites. Obviously, the defending champ is right there with him as well. Cadel Evans, sure 13th, but is he right where he wants to be?
No, all systems go for Cadel Evans. This is a perfect way for him to start. It's a very short, violent effort, not his specialty, but he held his own against Bradley Wiggins, only conceding 10 seconds. Great start for Cadel Evans as well.
Cadel Evans, the 35-year-old Australian, but let's talk about the 23-year-old American, TJ Van Garderen. An excellent day for him. He'll wear the white jersey on Sunday for the young rider. Is this a guy who in the future do we think could be contender for the overall yellow?
Absolutely. I mean, he was brought on to be kind of Cadel's lieutenant in the mountains, but I think he's going to gain some very valuable experience this year, and I see him coming back and being a real podium contender in just a matter of 2 or 3 years.
Solid time trialist, very good in the climbs. TJ Van Garderen, write his name down. You're going to be hearing a lot about this young man in the days and years to come.
So as we take a look right now at the white jersey standings after the prologue, TJ Van Garderen, of course, on the top of that group, but in second, a familiar name, Bob.
Edvaldo Hasenhagen, one of the most consistent and versatile pros in the field. When you get the better of Eddie B, you're doing pretty good. TJ, great ride.
After the race, Craig Hummer caught up with TJ Van Garderen.
TJ coming into the stage, a lot of talk about how Cadel's chances were going to, but when you and I talked yesterday, you said you were just excited for this chance to get out on the road.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. Just the adrenaline rush you get from being at the tour. I mean, it's coming down that start ramp, you think like, wow, this is the start of 3 weeks, but yeah, it's an incredible feeling.
You're going to get a chance to pull on the white jersey today in only your second Tour de France. What are your thoughts going to be when you're on that podium and stage?
Oh, it's going to be incredible. I got chills. I can't wait to get up there and get it. Yeah, I mean, I had this white jersey in mind for a while. I thought, normally I go pretty good in a prologue, so give it a go out there, and man, I'm just so excited.
Describe, if you can, just the lead up to this race for your team with all the pressure and on the emphasis of Cadel, but clearly you guys have come in very focused.
To be honest, the team has great spirit. They're super relaxed. We're having a bunch of fun. Andy Reese and Jim Akowitz were having a barbecue last night, cracking open a few bottles of wine. And I mean, the riders, yeah, we're pretty serious, but I mean, we all joke around on the table. And during the team meeting, Cadel, he was just saying like, hey, you guys, like, don't stress, winning the tour is fun. We had fun doing it last year. We'll have fun doing it this year.
Well, you had fun today. Congratulations on a great start.
Thanks a lot.
One guy who's probably not cracking open any bottles of wine and certainly isn't having any fun is Tony Martin, considered a serious contender for the Prologue. He had a bumpy ride, had to change bikes mid-race. You see him put his hand up here.
Flat tire, the only way to get to the finish line at this point in such a technical course, you got to change bikes. Tony Martin, one of the pre-race favorites, absolutely smoking at the halfway split. Very bad luck for the German current world champion in the time trial discipline. I think he's going to have some serious revenge in mind when we get to the two other longer individual time trials.
He chatted about his tumultuous day with Steve Perino.
Tony Martin already back at work. From our cameras, it wasn't totally clear what happened with your mechanical.
Yeah, I had a flat tire directly after the first split time. I could feel that my tire was slipping away in the roundabout in the second one, and then when I want to speed it up, I realized I have a flat tire. So I directly throw away my bike and changed to the spare bike. But anyway, at this moment, the morale is totally down, and yeah, you just keep on fighting to have a more or less still a good time, to don't lose too much time for GC. But yeah, all chances for the win were gone. I hit a glass. It's some part of a glass on the road, so it's nobody's mistake, and it's just bad luck.
I appreciate the time. Better luck going forward.
A deflated Tony Martin, obviously, but he says he has to keep fighting. That fight will continue tomorrow with stage 1, 198 kilometers from Liège to Serang. Since we had a Prologue in this year's tour, we didn't have one last year. How does that alter stage 1?
You know, it changes things quite a bit. You know, an opening stage without a Prologue, you don't have a GC leader, you don't have a bona fide, leader for the tour, so it tends to be a little more wide open, a little bit more chaotic, and I think we saw that a lot last year in the amount of crashes, leading up to the finish. So I think tomorrow's probably going to be a little bit more textbook, for sure.
Bob, quick final thought: 198 kilometers tomorrow, an uphill finish. How tough a stage is this?
It's a pretty tough stage. A lot of rolling hills before the finishing climb. The finishing climb in Serang tomorrow is very hard. It's a categorized climb. It's very steep. Small ring. Could be a little bit of a GC battle. Watch for Fabian Cancellara and his Radio Shack teammates to dominate the proceedings. They want to do everything in their power to keep that yellow jersey for Cancellara, but it's going to be a thrilling stage. To see who wins that, it's just about anybody's ball game in this field.
Make sure to join us again tomorrow for continuing coverage of the 2012 Tour de France. Live action from stage 1 begins at 8 a.m. Eastern and then at 8 p.m. Eastern. The three of us will be back for Tour de France Prime Time. For all of your tour info, make sure you check out NBCSports.com. The Prologue is in the books. Stage 1, that is coming up on Sunday. For our entire NBC Sports team, I'm Liam McHugh, and we will see you tomorrow as the 2012 Tour de France, the 99th edition of the Tour, continues.
Sports Network thanks you for watching.